Hello everyone, a very good morning and welcome to Byju's Exam Prep. Welcome to another session on international relations. Yesterday we had almost completed the West Asia region and India's ties with West Asian countries. So we were left with the last topic, that is India-Iran relations. In the previous chapters, we have covered a small part of India-Iran relations. You have some idea regarding what kind of ties we have with Iran. So today, let's take a slightly deeper look at the India-Iran relations and complete this chapter on West Asia. As you know, Iran is a strategic partner for India. It occupies a very, very important location in West Asia. And particularly from India's point of view, Iran is crucial for us to connect with Afghanistan and Central Asia. So this is something we have studied repeatedly in the previous chapters. When we discussed India-Afghanistan and covered many important projects like Chabahar Port Project, the Zaranj-Dilaram Highway, right? I had explained the role of Iran in helping us to connect with Afghanistan. Similarly, when we covered Central Asia region, even there we covered the same point regarding how important Iran is to India to connect with Afghanistan and further with Central Asia. So from connectivity point of view, Iran becomes strategically very important for India. It can also be a great partner for counter-terrorism in the Afghanistan-Pakistan belt, because the terror ecosystem present around the Afghanistan-Pakistan border affects Iranian interests as well. So in the past, India and Iran have worked together on these critical domains with regard to connectivity, to link with Afghanistan and Central Asia, and to counter terrorism and to stabilize the region, especially around the Afghanistan-Pakistan belt. But if you look at it historically, our relations have gone through a lot of complex phases. I'll give you a brief idea regarding how the relations have been in the past. And based on that, let's take a look at the recent ties between India and Iran. See, during the Cold War period, especially from 1952 to 1979, during this period, Iran was ruled by the Shah of Iran. The Shah of Iran of the Pahlavi dynasty was put into power, and it was always alleged that it was the US which propelled the Shah of Iran into power. During this period, Iran was a pro-US ally. Can you believe it? Today they are arch rivals. Today Iran has sworn to wipe out Israel from the map. US has consistently targeted Iran along with Israel. Right? US and Israel have not only targeted Iran diplomatically and economically, they've even launched major covert operations to destabilize Iran. That is the rivalry they have today. But there was a point where Iran and US were very close friends, very close allies. Because during this period, it was alleged that the Shah of Iran was installed by the CIA, the Central Intelligence Agency. It had toppled the previous regime, which was not favorable to US. And a pro-US leader was installed, the Shah of Iran, which made Iran a Western ally during the Cold War period. So obviously, during this period, India was on the opposite side of the Cold War. We were initially championing the non-aligned movement until 1971. Then we became aligned with the Soviet Union after 1971. So as a result, India and Iran didn't get an opportunity to work together during this period until 1979. Is that clear? We were on the opposite sides of the Cold War divide. Then in 1979, there was a massive revolution that broke out in Iran, the Iranian Revolution. The people of Iran in general, they had grown dissatisfied with the Shah of Iran's rule. He was accused of being a puppet of the US. This was resisted by Iranian people, and also the lack of growth and development led the people to protest against the Shah of Iran, calling for a regime change. This revolution was quickly hijacked. It was taken over by Shia radical clerics. The Shia radical clerics of the country, they hijacked the revolutionary movement, they took over this movement entirely, and it turned into an extremely violent revolutionary movement. Following several phases of violence, protests, and conflict, finally, Iran saw a complete regime change. The Shah of Iran was thrown out. The Shah was thrown out of power. His regime was toppled during the Iranian Revolution, primarily by the radical Shia clerics. The Shah of Iran ran away, took shelter in US, and the Shia radical clerics took control of power in the country and established a conservative, autocratic regime. Actually, before this, Iran was a relatively open society, a more open, progressive society, in a way similar to Afghanistan. If you remember, I showed you some images from Afghanistan from 1960s, how the culture was so different, how it transitioned, right, with the rise of radicals. The same happened with Iran as well. As it was a Western ally aligned with US, there was a lot of Western influence in Iran until 1970s. A more open, progressive culture was prevalent. But as the radical Shia clerics took over during the revolution, they introduced a conservative, autocratic regime. And even today, it's the clerics who hold the control of power. Iran has a supreme leader, the Ayatollah. Even today, the Iranian government and the Iranian president, they work under the Ayatollah Al-Khamenei, who's the most supreme leader in the country. He's a religious figure. He's a radical religious cleric. Is that clear? So Iran has become notorious after the revolution. It has enforced very strict dress codes, a very rigid interpretation of the Sharia law, which primarily affects women. Gender rights and human rights in general gets compromised under such conservative autocratic regimes. You might have seen in the last 1.5 years itself, Iran has faced massive protests, especially from women, because there was a horrific incident. A person by the name Amini, Mahsa Amini, she was arrested by the Iranian moral police. This happened last year. Iran has a dedicated moral policing unit which enforces all the dress codes and social codes on the people. All right. So the Iranian moral police, they detained a woman called Mahsa Amini, and allegedly they blamed her for not following the strict rigid dress code. And they tortured her, beat her up in jail, in custody, which led to her death. So the death of Mahsa Amini, because of not following dress codes, religious dress codes, triggered a massive protest against the regime. Women and several youngsters, the more progressive individuals who were frustrated with the autocratic rule, they all organized last year and led massive protests against Iranian regime. Right? You might have read about that in newspapers as well. So from 1979, Iran fell into Shia radical conservatism. And as soon as the radical Shias came to power, Iran declared almost war against Israel and US. It became the enemy of US and Israel. Iran pledged complete support for the Palestinian movement, and it committed that it will give any support needed to Palestinian groups, including terrorist groups, to target Israel. It declared hostilities with the US. Even US got hostile to Iran because its pro-regime was toppled. The Shah's regime had been toppled, and now radical Shia clerics had taken over. So hostilities started between both Iran and US, and as well as between Iran and Israel. So as a result of all these tensions and the rise of radicalism as well, it was difficult for India to get closer to Iran. As a more open-minded democracy, a liberal secular democracy, initially it was difficult for India in the late 1970s and early 1980s to set up stronger ties with Iran. All right, Iran was preoccupied with its hostility with Israel and US, and India also found it difficult to reach out and establish stronger relations. We had basic relations, but nothing special about it. All right. Then in the 1980s, a major division emerged between India and Iran, which actually affected the relationship. When Kashmir insurgency broke out, when the Kashmir insurgency terrorism escalated in the 1980s, Iran took a stand on the Kashmir issue and favored Pakistan. This obviously irritated India. And during the Iran-Iraq war, India was forced to side with Iraq because Iraq was very close to India. The government of Saddam Hussein was very close to India, and it was the largest oil supplier to India. India had very good equations with Saddam Hussein, the dictator of Iraq. Iraq was a top oil supplier to us, so we had very good relations. We were in a way forced to support Saddam Hussein and Iraq. And Iran had aligned with Pakistan in a way on the Kashmir issue, raising the Kashmir issue against India. So these divisions which came up in the 80s affected the relationship. We again didn't get close to each other. So basically, from 1950s all the way till 1990s, India, Iran actually weren't that close. Is that clear? From 1950s to 1990s, it was not a very close relationship. The geopolitics of the region and the world had largely kept us separated. But then, an opportunity came up in the common neighboring country, that is Afghanistan. I hope you guys remember, we had studied this in detail and explained how in 1996, when Taliban captured power in Afghanistan for the first time, both India and Iran saw this as a threat to their interests. India was worried that Taliban, which was a pro-Pakistan outfit, a Pakistani puppet, would allow terror groups to flourish in Afghanistan that would target India. Iran was concerned, the Taliban being a Sunni extremist group, it could threaten the interests of a Shia regime in Iran. As Iran was a Shia power, it had concerns about a Sunni radical extremist group in neighboring Afghanistan. So this brought India and Iran together, along with Russia. Because obviously Russia was concerned about Taliban. Russia's predecessor state, the Soviet Union, had been defeated by the Afghan Mujahideen, which eventually gave birth to Taliban. So Taliban's predecessor is the Afghan Mujahideen. It was born out of the Afghan Mujahideen. So obviously for Russia, Taliban was a threat. Russia was concerned that the terrorism present here would spill over to Central Asia and the Caucasus region of Russia. So driven by these common interests, India, Iran and Russia got together to sponsor a covert war in Afghanistan to target the Taliban regime. We collectively sponsored the Northern Tribes, the Northern Alliance, headed by Ahmad Shah Massoud. It was basically a coalition of different northern tribes like Tajiks, Uzbeks, Kazakhs, and other northern tribes which are connected to Central Asia. So this collective alliance group, which had its own insurgency militia going on, especially in the Panjshir Valley, in the northern parts of Afghanistan, these armed groups were supported by the intelligence agencies of India, Iran, and Russia. Russia gave us access to some of the Soviet military bases in Central Asia, in Tajikistan and Uzbekistan. From these military bases, India's RAW would organize weapon support and funds and medical support, along with Iranian and Russian intelligence, to prop the Northern Alliance against the Taliban regime. So this was the first time that India-Iran saw a strategic collaboration. We found a common ground in Afghanistan where we worked closely to our intelligence agencies to protect our interests and to counter the threats posed by the Taliban regime. So from here onwards, India and Iran got very close to each other. This laid the foundation for the strategic partnership. We both realized we could help out each other in intelligence sharing, in counterterrorism, etc. Remember, I told you that the Baloch groups, which have rebelled against Pakistan in Balochistan region, they are found in neighboring Iran as well. And obviously, India has maintained contacts with Baloch groups. Since many decades, India's RAW has some contacts with Baloch groups. So here as well, Iran plays a critical role in keeping a check on Pakistan, in keeping a check on Pakistan's nuclear program as well. Because obviously Iran would be concerned about a nuclear neighbor, right? So in monitoring Pakistan, monitoring the terror groups, Iran can be a great ally for India. That's what we realized. And we could help Iran in bringing investments, in purchasing its oil, which would raise revenue for the country as it had faced a lot of hurdles with Western countries. As Iran was not able to trade easily with Western countries because of the tensions, relations with countries like India became more convenient. So very quickly, Iran became the second largest supplier of crude oil to India. Iran is also blessed with oil and gas reserves in the Persian Gulf, near the Hormuz Strait. It has massive oil fields and gas reserves. And within a few years, it became the second largest supplier of crude oil to India. It even overtook Saudi Arabia. After Iraq, Iran became the top supplier to us. So throughout this decade, we actually enjoyed very good relations. From 2000 to 2010, India, Iran enjoyed very good relations with each other. We became strategic partners of each other. The economic relationship flourished. Trade increased by a very big margin. India started investing as well in Iran's oil and gas sector. India's OVL, ONGC Videsh Limited, it bought stakes in the Farzad B gas field of Iran, in the Farzad B gas field in Persian Gulf. India made investments along with Iranian companies to jointly explore the oil gas reserves. We even proposed a pipeline, the IPI underwater pipeline, to bring oil and gas from Iran to Pakistan to India under the Arabian Sea. All right, India was very eager to take this pipeline forward as it was a more viable route. See, we wouldn't be worried about Pakistan disrupting the supply or terrorists attacking the pipeline because this would be an underwater pipeline. It would largely be out of reach for terror groups. Even Pakistan, if it wanted to disrupt access, it won't be able to do that so easily. So India had placed a lot of hopes on the IPI pipeline actually. Right? By then, by around 2005, you should understand that in Afghanistan, big changes had happened. The Taliban regime had been thrown out by the US invasion. Right? In 2001, 9/11 attacks had happened. Al-Qaeda was held responsible, Taliban was held responsible for sheltering Al-Qaeda. So US with its NATO allies declared war on Afghanistan. They invaded the country, toppled the Taliban regime. So Taliban had been thrown out and a civilian government had been installed. So India got very close to the Afghan civilian government. We built close relations with the new Afghan government and we started making big investments in Afghanistan. Correct? We started taking up key highway projects like Zaranj-Dilaram Road. And we were hoping that Iran would help us complete the link by building the strategic Chabahar port and the Chabahar railway line. This is where a strategic partnership started booming between India and Iran. By 2005, India was securing access to the Chabahar port in Iran. We were taking up the construction of the port with Iran, with Indian investments. And a railway line and road project was proposed to connect the Chabahar port with Zahedan. Zahedan is a border town in Iran along the Afghan border. So till here, from the Chabahar port, a road and railway line was proposed so that it could directly link with Zaranj in Afghanistan on the other side of the border. From here, the road would lead to Dilaram till Kabul. And this road could easily be extended to Central Asian countries. So this strategic route was seen by India as vital for our investments that we were making in Afghanistan. Let me just show you a couple of maps. Please take a look at the map here. India's ambition, as we've understood, was always to connect with Afghanistan and as well as with Central Asia, to access the resources of these regions, which were willing to share their resources with India. Only problem was connectivity, as Pakistan was always a hurdle. Pakistan would never give us transit access. So we worked on the strategic Chabahar port project due to our close ties with Iran. We were planning for a railway line and a direct connection to Zahedan, the border town here, which would further link with Zaranj-Dilaram road that India was building in Afghanistan. Now from here, this road could easily be taken to Central Asia, thus completing this entire link. So from 2005, India worked on these major connectivity projects. And finally, once completed in 2017, we even signed a trilateral agreement. A trilateral agreement had been signed between India, Iran, and Afghanistan to operationalize the Chabahar trade route. To operationalize the Chabahar trade route. Is that clear? So these plans were crucial for India to access Afghanistan, to access Central Asia, and to tap the resources from the region. Because in Afghanistan, we had won a mining license. Can you see the Haji Gak iron ore mine over here? It's a major iron ore mine in Afghanistan. So since we had a friendly government in Afghanistan, since India had made a lot of investments, India had won the mining license to mine iron ore from Haji Gak. Our plan was to transport the iron ore through a road rail network into Iran and to Chabahar port, from where we could bring this to India to be processed further. These were the ambitious projects India had kept in mind while building a strategic partnership with Iran. So basically, by 2005-2008, Iran was not just an oil supplier, it was not just guaranteeing our energy security. It had become a key partner to counter terrorism, to watch Pakistan, and to build connectivity with Afghanistan and Central Asia. So that was the kind of important relationship that we had built with the country. But by this time, Iran-US tensions started escalating. By 2004-2005 itself, Iran-US tensions had increased. By around 2004, Iran-US tensions had gone up, primarily because of its nuclear weapons program. As Iran always felt threatened by Israel and US, right? It decided to pursue nuclear weapons. And from 1990s itself, it had started a secret nuclear weapons program. Is that clear? Iran was secretly in touch with Pakistan, North Korea, Libya, right, where nuclear secrets were being leaked. And it was starting to build its own nuclear weapons program to build a deterrence against the regional rivals, Saudi Arabia, Israel, and as well as US. So as Iran pursued nuclear weapons, American allies, Israel and Saudi, they obviously felt threatened. So they aligned together to target Iran. Right? These tensions were there from 1979 itself, after the Iranian Revolution, after Shia radicals took over. It kept escalating throughout 1980s, 1990s. But with the weapons program, from 1990s to early 2000, the tensions increased further, where US and Israel would directly start targeting Iran's nuclear program. Saudi Arabia was involved in its own covert war against Iran. Right? It was their Shia-Sunni divide and rivalry. Israel and US, they tried derailing Iran's nuclear program. They started covert operations to assassinate Iranian nuclear scientists and top generals. Israel's Mossad and the CIA of US, they would collude together to launch covert operations against the nuclear program, and they assassinated several nuclear scientists, several top generals of Iran who were overseeing the nuclear program. Along with that, they even used a cyber war campaign. Along with the assassinations that they were carrying out, they even waged a cyber war and used a computer worm called Stuxnet to destroy few nuclear centrifuges of Iran. Is that clear? Stuxnet is one of the most sophisticated computer worms or malware which has been developed. Allegedly, it's developed by Israeli and American cyber intelligence agencies. And they launched the cyber war targeting the weapons program of Iran, and they managed to destroy some nuclear centrifuges, which was enriching uranium to weapons-grade uranium. So as a result, tensions had escalated from 2004 onwards, and by 2008, 2010, it appeared that US and Iran were on the brink of war. They were on the brink of conflict. Parallelly, the US had imposed crippling economic sanctions. President Obama, who had come to power by 2009, 2010, had targeted Iran with crippling economic sanctions, which was having a huge impact on the Iranian economy. Right? At this point, the US tried pressurizing India to join the sanctions and to cut off trade with Iran. But the then Manmohan Singh government, bypassed the American sanctions, ignored the American pressure. India continued its independent foreign policy built on strategic autonomy. Right? Since we had such big interest with Iran, it wouldn't serve our purpose to join America's tensions with Iran. Right? Iran was a critical partner by now. We had made big investments in Iran, including the Chabahar port. So we couldn't compromise these interests at any cost. So the Manmohan Singh government ignored the American pressure, bypassed the sanctions, and continued oil imports by working out alternate payment systems instead of using the US dollar. As we could no longer use the US dollar and Western banking financial systems to pay for Iranian oil, we started exploring alternate payment systems. We tried the Asian Clearing Union in Turkey, in Istanbul. We tried using alternate currencies to pay for Iranian oil through Asian Clearing Union for a few months. But later, this route was also blocked by American sanctions. Then finally, a rupee-based payment system was implemented, very similar to what we have done with Russia right now. Correct? With Russia as well, we are doing the same. We're using alternate payment systems to pay for Russian oil. So rupee-based payment system was worked out. Basically, a Vostro account was set up in India, in Indian banks, where we would deposit the money for Iranian oil in Indian rupees. And Iran could use the rupees deposited to settle the trade balance with India, basically to procure what it wanted within the Indian market. So such an alternate payment system was worked out to bypass the sanctions, and this helped Iran to remain our strategic partner. Iran was very impressed as India went way above what was needed and protected the relationship, because this support from India was crucial for the Iranian economy. But however, parallelly, our ties with the US was also growing. We couldn't completely ignore US as well. So to please the Americans, India quit IPI pipeline. We dropped the IPI project, and that is why the US encouraged India to participate in an alternate project, which is your TAPI pipeline. That's the story behind TAPI pipeline and IPI pipeline project. Our initial interest was in IPI pipeline, which would be underwater pipeline and more safer for India. But US was pushing the TAPI pipeline, which would be on land from Turkmenistan to Afghanistan to Pakistan to India. India knew TAPI pipeline was more risky because Pakistan could easily cut off access anytime. Terrorists could attack the pipeline either in Afghanistan or Pakistan. But the US imposed this on India, right? Because we were quitting IPI pipeline to please the Americans to protect our interests with US as well. And instead, we took up TAPI project. But on the other hand, we balanced it out. We bypassed the sanctions, we ignored the American threat and pressure, and continued our trade, especially oil trade with Iran. Is that clear? So this relationship continued to grow from 2010, 2011 onwards. Understood? But then, as the sanctions had its impact, right? Of course, US can deliver very significant economic hit. As the US dollar dominates the global financial system, right? It can cut off almost all the funding routes, and it becomes very difficult to operate, to trade and get investments. It will become impossible for small countries like Iran. So eventually, Iran's economy started taking a hit, and this increased the tensions further. The Cold Wars continued, where assassinations were happening. Iran was also retaliating by sponsoring Hamas and Hezbollah. Right? It was targeting Israel. So this regional and global Cold War continued between these powers, and it appeared that the region was on the brink of war in 2013-2014. Especially between US and Iran, tensions were so high that it appeared that the war might break out anytime soon. So at this point, to reduce the tensions, to tone down the tensions, a negotiation began between the P5 countries led by European powers. They tried to mediate between US and Iran to work out a deal. This deal, which was worked out in 2015, is called the Iran Nuclear Deal, or JCPOA, the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action. All right? JCPOA, Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action. This deal was worked out between the P5 plus one. Plus one refers to Germany, along with European Union and of course Iran. These were the parties to the deal. This important nuclear deal was worked out between the P5 countries, that's your 5 permanent members of UN Security Council. So it was primarily UK, France, and Germany, the European powers, which took the lead. And along with Russia, China, they brought US to the negotiating table to discuss the issue with Iran and the European Union. And together, they worked out the nuclear deal in 2015, or the JCPOA, which helped in reducing tensions between US and Iran. Now, according to this deal, Iran agreed to stop its nuclear enrichment, to halt the enrichment of uranium to weapons-grade uranium. You need at least 90% enriched uranium to produce nuclear warheads, to make nuclear weapons. As you know, uranium is available naturally, right? The concentration is very less. You can't use that in a nuclear reaction. Even to generate electricity, for civilian purposes also you need enrichment. But to make a weapon, you need highly enriched uranium, which is almost 90% enriched. That's why nuclear centrifuges are used to carry out the enrichment process. So Iran agreed to halt its centrifuge operations, to halt the enrichment, which would mean its program will come to an end. Without enriched uranium, it can't make nuclear bombs. And whatever enriched uranium was already made, that would be given off. It would be transferred to European countries. It would be transferred to UK, France, and Germany. And in return, they will give civilian nuclear technology to Iran. And US will lift the sanctions. This is what they agreed to. Is that clear? I'll repeat this point. Under the nuclear deal, European countries, UK, France, and Germany, the P5 plus one, they convinced Iran to halt the program, halt the enrichment. And whatever enriched uranium was already there, the weapons-grade uranium through which a bomb could be made, that would be entirely transferred by Iran to the hands of European countries. All right? So Germany, France, UK will get hold of the enriched uranium. In return, they will help Iran with civilian nuclear technology for generating electricity, for medical purposes, etc. And US, since Iran has stopped the program, would lift the economic sanctions which was crippling the Iranian economy. This was the deal which would, address the interests of all the countries, and it helped in toning tensions down. And it was a big relief for India as well, because we no longer had to choose between US and Iran. Because from 2008 to 2015, as tensions had gone up, India was forced to make a choice. Right? That's why we had to balance Iran and US on both sides. It was becoming a dilemma, challenge for us. But because of the peace deal, the nuclear deal that was signed, it was a big relief for India, because right now the sanctions were lifted, and we could freely go ahead and trade with Iran. We could increase our investments. We could continue purchasing oil from Iran. Right? So India was very pleased with the deal, and we were completely supportive of the nuclear deal. So this deal was being implemented for 3 years. Until 2018, it went very well. Right? That's why even we stepped up our involvement. India signed the tripartite agreement, the trilateral agreement with Iran and Afghanistan to fully operationalize the Chabahar deal and make sure the Chabahar route is used for connectivity with Central Asia. So when India was scaling up its plans, we had ambitious plans for the region, and Iran was crucial for all the connectivity plans. At this crucial point, the US quit the nuclear deal. The US under President Donald Trump increased the tensions with Iran again by blaming Iran for violating the terms of the deal. Donald Trump alleged that he had information to show that Iran was not following the terms of the deal and it was still secretly developing nuclear weapons. But there was no concrete evidence provided by the US to justify these claims, because the deal was monitored by IAEA, International Atomic Energy Agency. Under the deal, Iran had agreed to allow IAEA inspection. IAEA is the global nuclear watchdog. All right, it promotes nuclear safety and security standards and reports to UN General Assembly and UN Security Council. So IAEA inspectors were given access to Iran to inspect the nuclear facilities, to keep a check on whether Iran was enforcing the deal and following the terms of the deal. So IAEA certified that Iran was strictly following the deal. It had stopped all enrichment. The previously enriched uranium, most of it had been already transferred to Europe, and European countries were looking to help Iran with civilian technology. Right? The same claim was made by European countries as well, who were party to the deal. Britain, then France and Germany, even Russia, China, they all reiterated that Iran is following the terms, it's not breaking the deal. But Donald Trump made this unilateral allegation saying that Iran has broken the deal. This was mostly because Donald Trump was largely pro-Israel, a very close Israel ally. Israel was never supportive of this deal, as it reduced the tensions between US and Iran. So as Donald Trump made these allegations, he quit he pulled US out of the deal and brought back very, very stringent sanctions against Iran. Basically, the tensions were back. The covert war started again. US assassinated few top Iranian generals in the coming months. Iran tried retaliating by stepping up support for terror groups in the region, including Hamas and Hezbollah. And the tensions went so high that it appeared again that a conflict might break out between US and Iran. So 2018-2019 was again a tense period in this region with the possibility of a war or a conflict. Iran started retaliating against the oil shipments in the Hormuz Strait in the Persian Gulf. It stepped up support for Houthi rebels in Yemen to counter Saudi interests. So regional tensions went up. The whole region got even more destabilized after US quit the deal unilaterally, right, without any proper explanation or evidence. All the others were firmly saying that Iran is following the deal, it's not breaking the deal. IAEA certified it. Their inspectors had access to the nuclear plants. European countries were party to the deal. They said that Iran is following the deal. But still, US quit the deal, reimposed very stringent sanctions that hit Iranian economy again. So as Iran's economy started crumbling, the tensions went up. Iran started retaliating against US. US would also retaliate, leading to heightened tensions. And this time, Donald Trump put tremendous pressure on all the countries to zero out oil imports, to cut off oil imports completely from Iran. A final ultimatum was issued for other countries like India, China, and others who were procuring oil from Iran. Is that clear? The US adopted a law as well. The US Congress passed a law called CAATSA or CAATSA. It stands for Countering America's Adversaries Through Sanctions Act. Under this law, the US declared 3 countries as adversary states of the US. That is Iran, Russia, North Korea. Is that clear? Iran, Russia, North Korea. These 3 countries, which are rivals of US, they were officially declared as the adversary states of US, and primary sanctions were imposed on them, especially targeting their defense and oil sector, mainly to cripple these countries of their revenue. Under CAATSA, others who will deal with these countries in the defense and oil sector, they will attract secondary sanctions. All right? So India was pressurized by Donald Trump. The Modi government was brought under tremendous pressure by the US to follow those sanctions at any cost, and we were forced to zero out oil imports. This is a rare instance where we have followed unilateral sanctions, the two by the US. Otherwise, we have always rejected American sanctions, right? We have never followed American sanctions either on Myanmar or on Russia or even on Iran previously. But this time, the pressure on India was too much. The Donald Trump government was putting a lot of pressure on India. The Modi government was forced to give up, and we cut off oil trade from Iran. Imagine from a top supplier, we brought down the imports to zero within weeks, within months. So Iran's revenue was hit, and it was very angry and upset with India that India had followed American sanctions. This is what affected the relationship. This is why Iran again got hostile to India. It got instigated against India as India aligned with US and joined the sanctions and cut off the oil trade. So from here onwards, India-Iran relations took a hit. India-Iran ties have been affected since 2018. Is that clear? So this puts a question mark on the Chabahar Port project and the agreement that we have signed, on all our connectivity projects to Afghanistan and Central Asia. Iran even dropped India from the Chabahar railway project. Remember I showed you the Chabahar railway line, which was supposed to connect the Chabahar port with Zaranj, that would connect with the Zaranj-Dalaram road that India had built in Afghanistan. From this key railway project, India was dropped. This was Iran's direct retaliation against India for joining the American sanctions. Iran always has been a close ally to China and to Russia. So Russia, China have become very influential, and China especially is bringing Iran under its Belt and Road Initiative. It has promised billions of dollars in investments because China can easily bypass American sanctions. China's economic strength is such that it can bypass American sanctions and give Iran all the money and support which is needed. So Iran, which grew angry with India, dropped India from the Chabahar railway project. Right, we lost out on this project. Chinese influence has grown much more. It was already influential; it has increased even more. Right, it's pushing the Belt and Road Initiative with billions of dollars in funding. And Iran even started raising the Kashmir issue against India. It would back Pakistan at UN and Organization of Islamic Cooperation to take a stand against India. Even when the Citizenship Amendment Act led to protests and controversies, and Pakistan raised the issue at UN and other platforms, Iran supported Pakistan. So on internal issues of India, Iran started taking a stand against the country, against India, and started backing Pakistan. All right, so that is how badly the relationship has been affected right now. So all the other projects we have seen, if you remember, we studied INSTC project, which includes Iran, the Haji Chabahar railway line. All these were ambitious connectivity plans that we had, but right now they're all uncertain. The Chabahar port even now is controlled by an Indian company, as we have invested here. Right, we got an exemption for Chabahar port from US. That's how we can continue our involvement here. Under CAATSA and other sanctions of US, Chabahar port has been exempted. So India continues to operate the Chabahar port, or Indian company operates the terminal. But it's only a matter of time. The contract will end very soon, and India might very well be replaced by China. Right, we're already out of the railway project. So this raises questions on the validity, the survival of all these critical projects where we have invested billions of dollars. Right, in Afghanistan itself, India has invested $3 billion. We have made $3 billion worth of investments. So all the Indian projects are under risk because our ties with Iran has been affected and Afghanistan has come under Taliban's rule. So both have become major concerns for India. Right, this further affects our connectivity with Central Asia. That's why with Central Asian countries, our top focus is to stabilize Afghanistan and discuss about the Chabahar trade route, how we can use and operationalize the Chabahar trade route. That has become a priority for India. Unless our relations improve, none of these initiatives which are proposed, none of them will take off. Right? Even the INSTC project will never take off. It will never see the light of the day because already Russia, the other partner, is facing challenges. Because of Western sanctions against Russia, INSTC project may not start. It may not take off. So if Iran continues to have this problematic relationship with US and even with India, even this project will just remain a proposal. Right? So India has some very, very big interests. We had a very good partnership going on, but it has been completely affected and disrupted because of US-Iran tensions. All right, US-Iran tensions, US-Russia tensions, US-China tensions. This has a direct impact on India as we are caught in between. It becomes a dilemma for India to balance out these conflicting powers. All right, so this completes the discussion on India-Iran relations. All right, I hope everything is clear. If you understand this, this is more than enough. Trust me. Now let's move on to the next big topic. We'll be looking at the global powers, the big powers, USA and Russia. All right. After the break, we'll take a look at all your doubts and questions. Let's finish India-US. It's another important topic, but a small topic. Let's finish India-US. We'll take a break after that. So after the break, we'll answer all the doubts and questions in one go. All right? So let's see how India's relations stand today with the United States. Because historically, you already know how the relations were. This has come up for discussion multiple times. Almost every single chapter, in every single class, we have made a mention of India-US relations, how it was historically. It has gone through different phases. From 1947 to 1970. From India's independence to 1970-71. What was India's position? India was non-aligned during the Cold War. Correct? We were championing the non-aligned movement, taking the middle path between the Western power bloc led by US and the Eastern bloc led by Soviet Union. Whereas US, on the other hand, even though it gave some assistance to India, it had major differences with India. The US could never understand India's non-aligned position. The Americans have always believed that if you're not with them, you're against them. They assume that India is against them just because we're not with them. Right? They never realized that India could take a middle ground without aligning with either of the power blocs. So this led to some ideological differences to crop up. Right? But initially, there was some assistance and cooperation. Particularly in 1950s till 1960s, there was some element of cooperation between India and US in critical sectors like agriculture and food security. Because after independence, India was struggling. Right? We were facing deadly famines. We had shortage of food. At this point in time, it was US which provided food aid. It supplied wheat and essential food grains to India. And India was leading a ship-to-mouth existence. Right? We didn't produce enough food on our own. We had critical shortage of food grains, causing famine, leading to the deaths of thousands and lakhs of people in India. Right? So it was US which was helping India through a food aid program, supplying wheat and food grains to India. So India had become dependent on imports, on food donations from abroad to feed the population. This was before the Green Revolution of India. Right? So we were leading a ship-to-mouth existence, and the food shipments were mainly coming from the US to India. Apart from that, in the nuclear sector, US has started assisting India in developing nuclear energy. By 1950s itself, a Canadian nuclear reactor had been sold to India, and US was sharing some nuclear technology with India, working with India to develop civilian nuclear energy. All right? So some close relations had started. We also studied, if you remember, how India-US collaborated to monitor Chinese activities. I explained this under India-China. In late 1950s, to monitor China's activities in Tibet, to monitor its crushing of the Tibetan uprising, to monitor its nuclear program. India-US jointly, right? They ran a covert intelligence operation. India's IB, Intelligence Bureau, and CIA. They together ran a covert intelligence program in the Himalayas to monitor China's activities in Tibet and beyond. So there was some assistance, some cooperation in the initial decades, but it was largely affected by the ideological differences of the Cold War. As I told you, the US would never come to accept that a democracy, the world's largest democracy, was not aligning with Western democracies. They could never understand India's middle path approach, why India was being non-aligned. So this did create some scope for suspicion, lack of trust. Even though some friendly ties existed, the doubt factor, the suspicion factor was always there in the relationship. This suspicion of India came true in 1971 when US unnecessarily became hostile to India during the 1971 war. We studied how US directly backed Pakistan in the conflict. How US President Richard Nixon and his National Security Advisor, Henry Kissinger, they ignored the genocide Pakistan was committing against Bengalis in East Pakistan, as Pakistan had become their close ally, right? It had become a military strategic partner for them. They ignored Pakistan's atrocities and instead they put pressure on India. They targeted the Indira Gandhi government and threatened India with military consequences if they went with the war. The American Navy was pushed into Bay of Bengal. An entire carrier battle group was pushed into Bay of Bengal to threaten India in order to protect Pakistan. Right? So it became a hostile threat. Basically, US was showing it was ready to go to war if required to protect Pakistan. It was ready to attack India. Right? Entire aircraft carriers, nuclear powered submarines were pushed with nuclear arsenal against India. So this was an open direct threat to India, and this is where India abandoned non-alignment. Prime Minister Indira Gandhi made a strategic choice as India was being pushed into a corner by US for no reason. Right? And US was aligning with a genocidal regime in Pakistan. India had no other choice to but abandon non-alignment, and we struck a landmark treaty with the Soviets. Right? We studied this under India-Bangladesh when we discussed the events of the war. Right? I explained all these key points. This was seen as a diplomatic masterstroke by Prime Minister Indira Gandhi as Soviet Union brought tremendous assistance to India. Along with diplomatic support, it gave direct military support to India to counter the American military threat. The Russian Navy would back up India in the Indian Ocean to push off the American threat, and it gave India the space, the time needed to crush Pakistan and break Pakistan into two parts. Without the Soviet support, it would have been almost impossible for India to withstand the American pressure. Is that clear? So as we became hostile to each other, as we aligned with Soviet Union, abandoned non-alignment, we became complete hostile threats to each other. The relationship from here onwards for the next 30 years would be filled with suspicion, doubt, lack of trust, and strategic differences. All right? Both the governments would never trust each other. The intelligence agencies, foreign ministries would never trust each other as hostilities took over in the relationship. The US escalated the tension by trying to target and derail our nuclear and space program. It's widely believed that the CIA made several attempts to disrupt our nuclear and space program, which was now being supported by Soviet Union. As the Soviets were backing our nuclear and space program, right, India was emerging as a nuclear power. We conducted a nuclear test in 1970s, the first nuclear test of India, Operation Smiling Buddha. This was the first nuclear test of India, right, in 1970s. Under Prime Minister Indira Gandhi, the first nuclear tests were carried out, which was a very rudimentary nuclear test. The whole idea was to make a point. Even though we were still developing the technology, the first nuclear test of India was to make a point, to prove a point to US and Western countries that India can stand on its own. Right? We had made it clear that we will not sign NPT at any cost. We will not sign CTBT. India made it clear we will retain the option of developing nuclear weapons as a strategic deterrence. Because not just China, US itself was a threat to India at this point. So to build nuclear deterrence against these powers, Indira Gandhi had decided that nuclear weapons were an absolute necessity. So India accelerated the nuclear program with the space program, and both had a lot of interlinkages. Soviet Union was directly backing both the programs with technological assistance and material support, and India went on to carry out the first test in direct breach of non-proliferation treaty. By 1967 itself, India made it clear that we are not going to sign NPT. By 1970s, we were very, very sure that we will not sign these discriminatory treaties, because signing them would mean we will have to give up our nuclear option. We could never develop nuclear weapons if we signed NPT and CTBT. Whereas the P5 countries, they could retain, develop, test their nuclear weapons freely. but we couldn't. Right? So this was discriminatory. It would create unfair treatment for the non-nuclear weapon states while giving preferential treatment to nuclear weapon states. So India rejected the discrimination of the treaty and we said we will never sign this. Do whatever you want, we'll never sign NPT. So India accelerated the nuclear program throughout 1970s, 1980s, 1990s, and the US kept targeting India as it didn't want India to emerge as a nuclear power. It's also said the US in a way overlooked China's covert support to Pakistan to develop its nuclear weapons. There are many records by former diplomats and intelligence officers which proves that the Americans knew that China was transferring nuclear secrets and nuclear material to Pakistan to prop up Pakistan against India. To counter India's nuclear program with Pakistan's nuclear program, China was playing a role behind the scenes, leaking nuclear secrets, designs, and leaking nuclear material as well, and helping it develop ballistic missiles. In a way, China was setting up Pakistan against India, and the Americans knew. The CIA knew what China was doing. It was proliferating nuclear secrets. Pakistan in turn was leaking it to Iran, Libya, and North Korea, and yet US did not act against this nexus. US did not target the China-Pakistan nexus because it believed that Pakistan could be a counterbalance to India. If India is developing nuclear weapons and Pakistan also does the same, then both will balance out each other. So this is how US, in a way, allowed Pakistan to become a nuclear power, right? All the while putting pressure on India and targeting India. So naturally, throughout this period, our relations would never improve. All right. But what is interesting is that culturally, people-to-people relations kept on improving from 1970s itself. Indians in general were fascinated by the US from the very beginning, right? By 1970s, several Indian youth, they were traveling to US to study, settle down, find lucrative jobs in the US. So the growing Indian community, the Indian diaspora, formed an important cultural bond. Right? By 1980s, 1990s, we had at least a few lakh Indians. There was a very strong Indian diaspora community. They were all well educated, right? They held very good jobs, either in the tech industry or in the medical industry, right? So Indians started contributing as well to the American economy. So very close people-to-people relations, cultural relations existed. Indians especially had a very positive view of the US. In 1980s, 90s, if you conducted a survey about asking, Indians, how do you feel about US? Everybody would have a positive view. Everybody would love to go to the US to study and settle. That was the kind of cultural craze that existed. But government relations were completely compromised. US was being openly hostile to India, and India was also countering this. Is that clear? It was filled with suspicion and distrust. So that is quite interesting. Usually when government relations are affected, even people-to-people relations get affected. But in the case of India-US, it was a very unique situation. So this relationship would not improve until 2001. Because in 98, we tested nuclear weapons again at Pokhran. Right? India deceived the US. India had to make extensive plans to deceive the American satellites and American intelligence agencies to conduct the nuclear tests. Because throughout the 90s, many attempts were made. But every time US satellites would pick up the planning on Indian side, they would put pressure on India to not carry out the nuclear tests. But finally, in 1998, after learning American tactics, we realized how to deceive them, how to deceive American satellites and the CIA. So through a well-planned operation under the Vajpayee government, India carried out the historic Pokhran tests, right, which led to a complete disruption of the relationship. The US was taken by surprise. The CIA had no clue that India was planning the tests. This was one of the CIA's biggest intelligence failures. Even today, it stands as one of the biggest intelligence failures of the CIA. They failed to get even a small hint that India was preparing for a nuclear test. So this led to another round of tensions because now US imposed sanctions on India. Right? We studied that. It joined Japan, China, and many countries. They were all upset that India tested weapons by violating non-proliferation treaty. In fact, for many decades, no country had tested nuclear weapons. India became the first after many years to test nuclear weapons. So as a result, there was a lot of negative sentiment around the world, especially all American allies, then China and others. They all targeted India, put economic pressure by imposing economic technological sanctions on India. Right? So relations were completely destroyed by this point of time. Right? Cultural ties existed, some economic ties existed, but politically, diplomatically, our relations were dead. It was completely hit. The improvement started only in 2001, following the 9/11 attacks. That's why I told you, under Pakistan and Afghanistan, I repeatedly told you that 9/11 attacks was a landmark event. It has changed geopolitics permanently. It has changed the very nature of geopolitics. The main alignments in geopolitics has changed because of 9/11 attacks. Following this deadly terror attack by Al-Qaeda, which was sheltered by Taliban, right? The US invaded Afghanistan, as we know. It got approval from the UN and formed a coalition force with NATO allies and invaded the country to topple the Taliban government and to target Al-Qaeda. So the US realized it couldn't trust Pakistan entirely. Right? In the case of 9/11 attacks, it said there was already a Pakistani connection. A Pakistani link existed. The Americans realized they couldn't trust Pakistan entirely in countering these terrorists and the Taliban. So they decided that they had to get closer to India. They realized that they needed some reliable partner for intelligence and counterterrorism. So this is where an opening came up between India and US. Right? India also, which was monitoring the developments in Afghanistan, we shared crucial intelligence with the Americans. As a friendly gesture, we informed the US about the Kunduz airlift, where Pakistan's ISI had secretly taken away Taliban and Al-Qaeda terrorists away from Afghanistan before the invasion itself. Before the Americans could invade, Pakistan had safely secured all the terrorists and leaders and hidden them in Pakistan. So India monitored this operation, the Kunduz airlift, and we gave intelligence about this to the Americans. So from here onwards, close intelligence counter-terror relations developed, and US started looking at India as a reliable counter-terrorism partner, a key defense intelligence sharing partner. And parallelly, the rise of China. By early 2000, China had risen. China was already a major economic power. It had emerged as a manufacturing powerhouse and was clearly on the path to becoming a global power that would challenge the US. So now, US needed a partner in the Indo-Pacific to counterbalance China. And who better than India? The US started looking at India with fresh eyes. Its perspective about India changed because even the Indian economy was booming by early 2000. Right? Thanks to our LPG reforms, our economy was one of the fastest growing economies along with the Chinese economy. Right? So the Indian market represented a massive interest for American corporates. American companies kept their eyes on the Indian market. They wanted to invest, they wanted to sell, export to India. So trade and economic relations became a top priority for the US. It wanted to capitalize on the opportunities, the economic opportunities in India, and also prop India as a counterbalance to China. As China is a authoritarian communist state, right, which is behaving aggressively, showing expansionist behavior. India is the opposite, right? India is a liberal, open democracy aligned with Western values and a completely non-aggressive power, a stabilizing power instead in the Indian Ocean. So US saw India as the perfect partner to counterbalance China in the Indo-Pacific. So these were the factors which opened up the relationship. All right, I would say there are three factors. I want you guys to make a note. There can be a question on these lines. UPSC might ask you, what factors led to the transformation of India-US relations? right, following years of hostility, suspicion, and mistrust. The three factors were the need for intelligence sharing, counterterrorism cooperation, and close defense relations. Given the common threats we both faced in Afghanistan-Pakistan belt, this was the prime factor. Second, the need to counter China. As India had border disputes, we had common concerns about Chinese aggression, right? US saw India as that counterbalance. It could set up India, give India more diplomatic military support, supply India with better weapons so we can stand up to China, and does act as an American ally in the region and counter Chinese influence. Along with that, the third reason were the massive economic opportunities that were opening up in India. These were the three primary factors. All right, please make a note of this. There can be a question. Because see, today, strategic experts are saying that India-US relationship is the partnership of the century. Right? Not just experts, even India and US themselves, the governments. The governments are saying that India-US partnership is the partnership for this century. It's the most defining relationship of this entire century, the 21st century. Right? The world's oldest democracy, aligning closely with the world's largest democracy. It makes perfect sense. We have common concerns, common interests, and today we have become extremely close partners of each other. Even an element of trust has been built into the relationship today. Is that clear? So definitely UPSC might ask this question, even though it's an old topic. Even now we are saying, recently there are statements that India-US partnership is a defining partnership of 21st century. So given these statements being made by President Biden, Prime Minister Modi and others, UPSC might pick up this topic. It might ask you, how come India's relations have transformed like this in the last 20, 30 years? Previously we were hostile to each other, suspicions were there, mistrust was there in the relationship. We were never close to US in the past. What drove this transformation? Give us the explanation, right? Give us the answer. So such a basic question can come, be prepared for it. There were three factors. The need to tackle terrorism in the Afghanistan-Pakistan belt, to share intelligence, to cooperate in counterterrorism, build defense relations, etc. The need to counter China, and the massive economic opportunities that were opening up. Right? Even India would benefit, not just US. We knew that US is a huge market. Already we had a lot of exports to the American market. We could drive further exports into US, thereby boosting domestic growth, domestic production, creating jobs in India. We knew we could attract investments from the US into India, bring FDI into India, bring capital into our capital markets. Right? We also knew we could access technology. If our price improved, we knew that the economic technological sanctions could be lifted, and we could access advanced technology that is readily available in the market to drive India's growth and expansion. So in a way, both of them needed each other. It was like perfect time, perfect place for both the countries. The stars were aligning for both of them. Right? That's why it is said that this century is the century of India-US relations. What will happen in this century will be defined by India-US partnership. All right. So in 2004, they decided to elevate the relationship following close intelligence cooperation, counter-terror cooperation. They signed the next steps in strategic partnership agreement. They established a strategic partnership and diversified the relationship. The relationship was opened up for many new areas and sectors. They started collaborating across multiple sectors, from education to healthcare, right? Climate change. All these other areas became a priority. Right? Education has always been a priority, given how many Indian students go to US to study. Thousands of Indian students every year prefer American universities. Right? Healthcare cooperation became a top focus. Climate change negotiations and working together to tackle climate change became a priority for India-US. To focus on clean, renewable energy, to coordinate their position regarding climate change convention, right? Promoting sustainable development. All these became priority areas. So that is why the strategic partnership was established. And based on this, a landmark agreement was signed. The 123 agreement, or India-US Civil Nuclear Deal. This was one of the biggest achievements of the Manmohan Singh government. Under Prime Minister Manmohan Singh, we saw the elevation of the relationship to strategic partnership level, and the most important deal was struck, which would change and transform this relationship permanently. The India-US nuclear deal, the civil nuclear deal. Imagine, just a few years ago, US was targeting our nuclear program. It wasn't allowing India to test nuclear weapons. It was trying to derail our program through active covert efforts. It was putting pressure on India. It had imposed sanctions on India. Such a country signing a civil nuclear deal with India was indeed a big deal. All right? It was indeed a very, very big development because it was bringing recognition to our nuclear program. Until then, India's nuclear program was seen as a rogue program. It was seen as an illegal program against international law. India was seen as a violator. We had been equated with Pakistan. Right? That is why the economic technological sanctions were placed on India, even by friendly countries like Japan. Many other countries, even New Zealand and many other nations in Latin America, which are good friends of India, they had all joined the economic technological sanctions. So this recognition from US was a lifesaver for India. It changed India's global image. Right? It elevated India in front of the global community and brought recognition to our nuclear program. It showed that our nuclear program is safe, it's responsible, unlike Pakistan's rogue nuclear program. If you want an example for a rogue nuclear program, it is Pakistan's. Because Pakistan has stolen the nuclear secrets because China leaked them. Right? It's largely stolen designs from China. And Pakistan has in turn leaked proliferated nuclear technology and secrets to the black market, to criminal networks, to other rogue countries like North Korea, Libya, and even Iran. So Pakistan is a proliferator of nuclear technology, whereas India has a very responsible program, and we are not responsible even for a single nuclear incident. We haven't seen any major nuclear accident. There's never been a case of any theft or any leakage of any nuclear material. Right? We have never sold any material illegally or technology illegally to others. We've ensured the integrity, the safety, the security of our program. So this track record of India was being recognized by the US. And if US gave the recognition, it would mean everyone else would follow. It would open up unimaginable opportunities for India, which never existed before. Right? That's why the deal was so transformative. Of course, US was not doing it out of goodwill. There was a selfish interest here. The deal would help American companies to set up nuclear reactors in India. American nuclear companies like Westinghouse, General Electric, or GE. These American companies were given nuclear projects in India, which are yet to commence. There are some other issues which is affecting the project. We are yet to start with those projects, but India promised to allot few nuclear projects to the US, to American companies. Right? So it seemed like a lucrative deal, which would benefit both the parties. It would serve both interests. So India agreed to sign the deal. It was a historic deal. The Manmohan Singh government even risked the very survival of the government to sign the deal. Because it was proposed. Right? There was a lot of opposition in the parliament. Opposition parties, even the allies of the coalition partners of Manmohan Singh's government, they opposed the deal very strongly. because of the history, the bad history behind with the US, especially the Communist Party, they strongly opposed the deal. They said they'll quit the government, they'll withdraw support. And if they did that, the government would have collapsed. So the government took that risk, the risk of where the government would fail, would collapse completely if coalition partners withdrew from the government. So, but the government succeeded in this effort, despite all the risks. The Manmohan Singh government succeeded in striking the deal, and we made commitments as per international standards. We accepted all the basic standards of International Atomic Energy Agency. We agreed to separate our military program from the civilian program and opened up the civilian reactors for inspection by IAEA inspectors. Until then, our nuclear program was closed completely to the world, right? So we took steps to separate our nuclear facilities. The military facilities were separated, which provide for the weapons program. They remain completely closed even now. No one has access to our military facilities. But the civilian nuclear facilities involved in civilian nuclear energy, they were opened up by India for IAEA inspections. We clearly separated them. This was a commitment we had made to the US. We made the separation and opened up civilian facilities for global inspection. So we are following all the basic standards, the safeguards that are recommended by IAEA. So in return, the US lifted all the sanctions and made a promise to India. It promised to help India get membership to all your export control regimes. There are 4 major export control regimes. Your NSG, the Nuclear Suppliers Group, which we've been studying from previous classes. MTCR, Missile Technology Control Regime. The Australia Group. And the Wassenaar Arrangement. Is that clear? The US promised to help India give complete support in getting membership to these export control regimes. These regimes control sensitive technologies, which have military application. Excuse me. These export control regimes, they regulate the trade, the export of certain sensitive technologies and materials. Like NSG, Nuclear Suppliers Group, regulates nuclear material. It regulates nuclear commerce, nuclear trade. Right? Only NSG members can export nuclear material and nuclear technology to each other. MTCR, Missile Technology Control Regime, regulates missile and drone technology. Missiles and drones and technology behind it. Right? That is regulated for exports. If the missile or drone can travel more than 300 kilometers, if it can carry a payload of more than 500 kilograms. So such technologies, which give rise to long-range missiles, long-range drones, they were prohibited for export under MTCR. Only MTCR members can trade those technologies. All right? So sensitive missile drone technologies were brought under regulation to MTCR. Then under Australia Group, certain chemicals, which could be used for making chemical weapons, they were brought under strict regulation. There are various chemicals in the industry, right, which could be misused for making weapons in violation of Chemical Weapons Convention. So Australia Group regulates the export and the trade of certain hazardous, dangerous chemicals which would be weaponized. Then you have your Wassenaar Arrangement dealing with all dual-use goods. There are several goods and technologies which have dual use, dual application. They have application in the civilian industry, and the same could be turned in the military industry to make WMDs or weapons of mass destruction, like sensitive battery technology, semiconductor technology, right, metallurgical processes. There are many such important technologies and processes in the industry which not only has a civilian application but can be turned into a military technology to make WMDs. So a list of these sensitive dual-use goods and technologies are restricted under Wassenaar Arrangement. So US promised to help India get membership to all the 4 export control regimes. Is that clear? This was a big development that happened. It lifted the sanctions on India, right, and promised India to get membership to these export control groups. So in return, we had separated the reactors, the military civilian facilities, and we opened them up for civil inspection by the IAEA. So this marked the new era in India-US relations. All right. Now, has India become a member of these export control regimes? Can you tell me in the comments? Has India managed to become a member of any of these groups? No. Okay. Most of them are saying no. Let me tell you, India has become a member of MTCR, Australia Group, and Wassenaar Arrangement. Please make a note of this. It's very important. From 2016 onwards, between 2016 to 2018, we gained membership to all these export control regimes. MTCR, Australia Group, Wassenaar Arrangement. We have become a member. The only group which we haven't joined is NSG. Even here, 47 out of 48 countries are supporting our entry. But as we studied in previous chapters, it is China which is blocking India's membership. It's because of China that India is not able to become a member of NSG. All right? It has equated India with Pakistan. It wants Pakistan also to be given this exemption. But apart from NSG, we've joined the other 3 export control regimes. So US has played a role. It has influenced others to support India's membership to these important groups. The advantage of being a member of these groups is that you can access technology. That is the advantage. If you ask why these groups are needed, why should we become a member? If you become a member, you can readily access advanced technology available in the market, or else your technology gets limited. Like look at BrahMos missile, for example. We couldn't increase the range of BrahMos. Have you ever wondered how come BrahMos had a range of 290 kilometers? It looks a little odd. For the world's fastest cruise missile, most versatile cruise missile, how come the range was just 290 kilometers? It's because of MTCR. If the range was more than 300 kilometers, Russia would be in breach of MTCR commitments, where it would have helped a non-MTCR country with sensitive missile technology. So to protect Russia's commitment, the BrahMos range was kept limited to 290 kilometers. All right. Similarly, cryogenic engines. India was struggling with cryogenic engines for 20, 30 years. Right now we have mastered it, but for 20, 30 years we were slowed down because we couldn't purchase cryogenic technology, which was readily available in the market. All right. Without cryogenic engines, you can't have more powerful rockets to lift heavier payloads into orbit. Understood? So now we have become a member of MTCR. That is why the range of BrahMos has been extended. You would have read just yesterday in news that the air variant of BrahMos was tested with a range of almost 500 kilometers. The range of BrahMos has been extended by India. It's possible because we became a member of MTCR. We can readily access cryogenic technology, other advanced technologies available because we are members of MTCR, Australia Group, and Wassenaar Arrangement. All right. So the final goal for India is to join NSG, so we can procure uranium and, if required, nuclear reactors as well from other countries. Understood? So the promise from both the sides is to set up nuclear trade, where American companies will invest in India. They'll not only sell uranium but also transfer technology and set up reactors in India. India has even assigned the sites. We have chosen the location as well for these American nuclear projects, but unfortunately, they have not been able to go ahead. Mainly because of our nuclear liability law. India's nuclear liability law is said to be not in line with IAEA standards. This is the law which defines who will pay compensation, who will be liable in case of a nuclear accident or a disaster. Imagine if a nuclear accident or a tragedy were to occur. Who will pay for the damages? Who will be held liable for that? Who will pay the compensation? That is addressed through this law. It's mandatory to have this law according to IAEA. Without this law, and without it being under IAEA standards, no one will invest in the country. Because all the companies will be worried about what will be their liability, what should be the compensation they should be paying. All right. So according to IAEA, there's a certain cap. A cap has to be placed, a limit has to be placed on what compensation can be sought from the manufacturer of the nuclear plant. But India's nuclear law, the liability law, goes against the IAEA cap. We have given an option for the victims of a nuclear accident to claim even more compensation from the manufacturers of the nuclear plant. Not just the operator of the plant who's responsible, not just the government of India, but the manufacturer of the reactor, the company which made the reactor, designed the reactor. They can be sued in court. They can be held liable beyond the limit mentioned by IAEA. So as the financial risk is very high, no foreign company is coming to India. They're not ready to invest because they're concerned about the liability that they'll be taking. All right. But however, we have approved all the safeguards. IAEA safeguards agreement has been approved. We are in full compliance with IAEA standards today. That is why we got this exemption from US and all countries to join NSG without signing NPT. Right? We got an exemption. We got the NSG exemption. We are the only country to have been given this exemption. Most countries have promised to help India join nuclear suppliers group without signing NPT. Now, what does this tell you? It tells you the safe track record of our nuclear program. That all these countries which are so committed to non-proliferation, they're all ready to accept India as a member in NSG, even if India will not sign NPT. Because joining NSG, there's a condition. Basic condition is that you should have signed NPT. Only NPT signatories can apply for NSG membership. But only for India, an exception is being made with the help of US. The US granted the exemption to us. It said, even if you don't sign NPT, we are okay with it because your nuclear program is clean, it is safe. Your standards are very good. You've never leaked nuclear material or technology. There has never been an accident or a tragedy in India. So US gave recognition to that, and it said that it will help India join NSG without signing NPT. Because India's stand is very clear. We will never sign NPT. Never ever. No matter what happens, we'll never sign NPT. If you sign NPT, you have to close down your nuclear program. You have to shut down your weapons program. Right? So US finally understands this, and it supported India, and all other countries also have supported India's membership, and they agreed to accept India without signing NPT. But China is the only one creating the problem and blocking our entry into the group. All right. Now, in the next two slides, I've given you some important points on why India-US matter to each other. What is the foundation of this strategic partnership that defines the 21st century? This is something we've covered already, we've discussed, but I've given you those points. I want you guys to pay attention to it. You basically might ask a question here. It is said that India-US relations are defining a partnership of the 21st century. Why do you think that is? Or why do you think India matters to US or US matters to India? Right? What common concerns, issues, interests do we have to make this the defining partnership of the 21st century? So such a question can be expected. So please remember to discuss on these lines. India is crucial to the US. It matters to the US because it serves American interests. Such as India has a vital location in the Indian Ocean, a strategic location. Right? India is a natural Indo-Pacific power, which today is the global focal point for the economy and geopolitics. India is a fast-growing economy, massive market, representing trade and investment opportunities for American companies. A key partner in counterterrorism, intelligence sharing, defense and military relations, including defense trade. Today, India has become one of the biggest buyers of American weapons. Right? It's creating jobs in the US. More importantly, we are ideologically aligned. We are all open, liberal, secular democracies, constitutional democracies. And US looks at India as the perfect counterweight, counterbalance to China. All right. Similarly, the United States matters to India as well. India relies heavily on the US. We see US as a stabilizing force in Asia. The American diplomatic and military presence all across Asia is welcomed by India. We know that the American diplomatic military presence will help us counter Chinese aggression and terrorism, which are the biggest concerns for India. From West Asia to East Asia, from Central Asia to Indian Ocean, all across this region, right? US has tremendous diplomatic and military influence. So this will definitely help India to protect India's interests by helping us in countering terrorism that emanates mainly from Pakistan. It will help us put pressure on China to protect our core interests, right? So that is why India needs the United States. US is a big source of FDI that brings investments into our industry. It's a source of technology, advanced technology, right? From quantum computing, artificial intelligence to 5G networks, right? Advances in medicines, in nanotechnology, in vaccine development. In all these critical areas, US is a leader, right? Even space technology, then clean renewable energy, climate change. In all these critical areas, American companies are global leaders, right? With regard to research, innovation, US institutions are global leaders. So we can collaborate with them, learn from them, and procure the technology as well. The US market is crucial for us, for Indian exports, because believe it or not, we have a trade surplus with US. Usually with most countries, we have a trade deficit, meaning we are importing more than exporting to them. But with India, US, it's a different case. With India, US, we're exporting more than what we're importing from US, which means it is benefiting our exporters, benefiting our domestic producers, our farmers, etc. We have a lot of exports headed towards the US, which creates a trade surplus in favor of India. Right? It boosts our forex reserves. It drives our exports, our trade, and domestic production and opportunities. Plus, we have global aspirations. We want global institutions to be reformed, like UN, World Bank, IMF. India wants to play a bigger role in global geopolitics. So US can help fulfill these aspirations of India. US can be the perfect partner for India to help realize these ambitions, these global ambitions of becoming a global power. And of course, our democratic tradition. Right? So kindly remember these basic points about why India matters to US and why the USA matters to India. All right? I think we can stop for now, take a short break. We'll come back and finish this chapter. We have a few small points left, especially the defense relationship. And I'll also talk about some new initiatives that have been launched. So we'll discuss some recent developments that have taken place. So take a 15 minutes break. Refresh yourselves, come back at 7:55. All right? Then we'll restart, we'll complete this topic soon, and we'll take up India, Russia after this. Hello everyone, welcome back to the session. So now let's continue with India-US relations. We understood how India-US became strategic partners, we understood the background to the relationship, the importance of the nuclear deal, and why India-US depend on each other. Now let's close this chapter by talking about the foundation of this relationship, which is the defense relations. India-US relations are largely built on the strong foundation laid by the defense military relations. Today, India has become a strategic military partner to the United States. Is that clear? We have procured several weapons and military equipment from the US. The US has been playing a very big role in modernizing Indian armed forces. We have several military exercises that are going on. We have very close intelligence sharing with each other. We are not just focused on countering terrorism, but countering China and its aggression in the Indo-Pacific has become a top priority and a top focus for both the countries. The US is supplying advanced weaponry to India, mainly to help India counter China. Remember, I mentioned the American policy called Pivot to Asia, which was launched in 2009 by President Obama. Under the Pivot to Asia policy, the US has pivoted or inclined towards the Asia region, the Indo-Pacific region. As US sees China as a direct threat to its global power status, as tensions have grown between US and China, the US has increasingly relied upon India to counter the Chinese aggression in the Indo-Pacific. So only by modernizing Indian forces and by supplying India with advanced weapons and military platform, that is how US plans to set up India as a counterbalance to China. Right? So this partnership is built on 4 foundational agreements. The US expects all its close military partners to sign these 4 foundational agreements. All right? It's not an American requirement. If you want to procure advanced weaponry from US, if you want to get access to the latest military technology from US, then all their military partners have to sign these 4 foundational agreements. So all the NATO allies who work with US closely, they've all signed the foundational agreements. Even other close military partners like Brazil, even non-NATO countries like Brazil and others, even they have signed the 4 foundational agreements. The moment you sign all the 4, you will get access to the latest weapons and technology from US. So these 4 agreements include the General Security of Military Information Agreement, which was the first one we signed in 2002. Under this agreement, you provide for sharing of military information, essentially military intelligence. The armed forces of both the countries will start exchanging, sharing military level intelligence with each other as part of this agreement. The second agreement we signed was LEMOA, the Logistics Exchange Memorandum of Agreement, signed in 2016. This provides for exchange of military bases, where the aircrafts, vessels of the other country can access the military bases of the other country. For example, the American Navy or the US Air Force, they can use Indian naval bases and air bases for logistical support, for refueling, resupplies, for servicing and maintenance, which basically increases the operational range of the American forces in the Indo-Pacific. And this is a reciprocal arrangement. Similar access will be given to Indian forces. The Indian armed forces will get access to American facilities. And as you know, US has military bases around the world, including the Diego Garcia military base in the Indian Ocean. So we can seek access to their naval bases and air bases where we can get logistic support. This helps Indian Navy, Indian Air Force to deploy to faraway regions without worrying about refueling and resupplies. So this extends the operational range of Indian forces, and that is why of late we are deploying into faraway regions in the Pacific as well. Right? We discussed in previous classes that we have similar logistics exchange agreements with Japan, with Australia, with France, with all the major partners. Right? We are signing these agreements, the logistics exchange agreement, so we can provide such military logistics and support each other to enhance the operational range. Then we have signed the COMCASA or the CISMOA. It was signed in 2018, Communications Interoperability Security Memorandum of Agreement. This is the general name of the agreement, CISMOA. The Indian version of the agreement is called COMCASA. The Indian version of this agreement was renamed as COMCASA, Communications Compatibility and Security Agreement. If you sign this agreement, you will get access to highly advanced encrypted communication technology from the US. See, we have procured a number of transport aircraft, we have procured surveillance aircraft, we have procured helicopters from the United States. These aircraft and helicopters, they will come with regular communication kits, which are not highly encrypted, so that might be vulnerable for enemy interception. If you sign CISMOA or COMCASA, then US will install the advanced encrypted communication kits on these aircraft and helicopters, which will give you very high level of security protection. It is near impossible to break American communication technology. All right? And it builds compatibility. If you're ever involved in a joint operation, then Indian aircrafts can directly communicate with American aircrafts, that too through encrypted channels. Now imagine, in the Indian Ocean, there's a scenario. Let's say a terror group has been found, they are sailing to a boat carrying weapons. Then maybe Indian Navy and American Navy, they launch a joint operation. So in counting these terrorists, where Indian vessels and aircrafts are involved, we can directly communicate with the American forces by using the common communication equipment, the highly encrypted common communication equipment. So it builds compatibility. Our forces will become compatible for joint missions and operations in the future. So this key agreement was also signed in 2018, with the last agreement being signed in 2020. This is BECA, Basic Exchange and Cooperation Agreement for Geospatial Cooperation. By signing this, you provide for exchange of geospatial intelligence. That is the intelligence generated through satellites, the geospatial imagery, the satellite-based location navigation data. Right? This serves a very important military purpose in surveillance, in navigation, etc. So the geospatial intelligence will be shared between both the sides. So these 4 basic agreements, the foundational agreements, have been signed by India, which makes India one of the closest military partners to the United States. The US has also set up a defense technology trade initiative that allows for selling advanced defense platforms to India. Today, the US is not just selling the platforms and weapons, it is looking at transfer of technology as well. It will boost the Make in India initiative. It will make India Atmanirbhar. Right? US is not just a weapon supplier anymore. We are looking at joint design and development, transfer of technology, where American platforms can be produced domestically in India. It will be a big boost for defense indigenization. It will create indigenous defense ecosystem in the country. Now that we have opened up defense sector for private participation, right? There are private defense companies, there are startups. So they will get great opportunities to collaborate and boost defense indigenization and provide for an indigenous domestic ecosystem. The US has also given India the status of major defense partner in 2016. This status is mandatory according to American laws. Only those countries which have the status of major defense partner can be eligible for advanced military technology from the US. If US has to sell advanced drones, advanced communication technology, and even aircrafts and helicopters to India, it is important to have the tag of major defense partner. Right? According to American law, only those countries given the status of major defense partner can be provided with advanced American technology. So US has given us this status, and we have even established a 2+2 ministerial dialogue. In fact, this was the first 2+2 ministerial dialogue of India, even before the one we set up with Japan and Australia. So this allows our foreign ministers and defense ministers to interact in a simultaneous meeting, in a joint meeting, to discuss all foreign policy and security issues. So the 2+2 meeting takes place frequently. Right? In fact, all the Quad countries, all the 4 Quad countries have 2+2 dialogue with each other. So India's foreign minister and defense minister will parallelly meet the Secretary of State and the Secretary of Defense of the US government. Right? It creates this platform where the top foreign and defense ministers can get together to discuss key foreign policy and security issues that affects both the countries. So this clearly illustrates the close defense-military relations, and you can see this in action. You can look at the military exercises which are going on between India and US. You can look at the weapons and military equipment that we have procured from the US. Today, US has become one of the largest suppliers of weapons and military technology to India. Is that clear? So there are top 4 suppliers to India, which I mentioned in the previous class as well, which includes Russia, USA, Israel, and France. These are the top 4 military suppliers to India. Russia has always been at the top from 1970s till now. Russia is always the biggest defense supplier, but the Russian share has definitely reduced in the last 20 to 25 years. Right? We have some issues with Russia. I'll discuss that later. We'll come to that in the next chapter. So India has looked at other sources for weapons as well. We don't want to be dependent just on Russian weapons and Russian military technology, as we have some issues with Russian weapons and Russian technology. So we are diversifying to source weapons from other countries as well, and USA, Israel, and France have become the other top suppliers. So please make a note of the military exercises. Please note down these basic facts. You can get a prelims question here. We have bilateral exercises such as Scope India between our air forces, Yudh Abhyas between our armies, and Vajra Prahar between our special forces. We also take part in multilateral exercises like Malabar naval exercise, which we have studied many times. The US also holds Red Flag and RIMPAC, which is an air force exercise and a naval exercise respectively. RIMPAC brings all the RIM countries of the Pacific for a multilateral naval exercise in the Pacific Ocean, which is led by the US Navy. So Indian Navy is invited and we participate as well. Red Flag is an air force exercise organized by US Air Force, where many countries are invited. India, the Indian Air Force, also is a major participant. Right? So this is how military exercises have gone up, and we have procured some advanced platforms, and you should know about it. We have procured some of the most advanced transport aircraft in the world. The C-17 Globemaster. You have seen a massive aircraft, which is also referred to as the Flying Elephant. It's a massive, very big size aircraft that provides strategic airlift capabilities. You can fit hundreds of troops in this aircraft. It is that big. You can even carry weapons. An entire helicopter can fit. Battle tanks, artillery guns can be kept inside this aircraft and taken right into forward areas. It can operate in very difficult terrain as well. It can land even in short runways, unprepared runways. Understood? This is the aircraft we usually use when we provide disaster management assistance, when we carry out evacuations. Right? The C-17 Globemaster is the one which is deployed. The C-130J Super Hercules. It's a tactical transport aircraft. It's a smaller sized aircraft, but it can be very discreet in its operation. It can fly very low, land in small runways, take off very quickly, that too in unprepared runways. So this can help in deploying troops, especially in inserting special forces behind enemy lines for covert operations. So such key aircraft have been procured for the Indian Air Force. They have boosted the airlift capability of Indian Air Force. Then we have the P-8 Poseidon, the P-8I Poseidon, manufactured by Boeing. It is one of the most advanced aircraft with regard to maritime surveillance and reconnaissance. Right? It's been procured for the Indian Navy. We are looking at another order as well. It will help in guarding our exclusive economic zone. It will help in covering the entire stretch of the Indian Ocean, even reaching the Pacific if required, for maritime surveillance and reconnaissance. It comes with advanced communication equipment, so it's mainly used for carrying out surveillance, for intelligence gathering. And it is also known for its anti-submarine warfare capability. It's popularly referred to as a submarine hunter. From the air, it can scan the waters below, pick out submarines which are hidden underwater, and launch torpedoes against the submarines. It can not only detect the submarine, it can attack the submarines as well from air. This is a weapon that we have procured primarily to target the Chinese Navy, as China has increased its submarine deployment in the Indian Ocean. Right? India is actively looking at anti-submarine capabilities, and P-8 Poseidon is an answer to that. It not only helps in maritime surveillance and reconnaissance, it helps in hunting submarines, in detecting them and destroying them as well. For that purpose, we have procured the Harpoon missiles. The Harpoon missiles that can be launched can target the hidden submarines. We have procured Apache and Chinook helicopters. Apache is an attack helicopter, mainly used for ground operations, air-to-ground operations. It will support the troops which are carrying out invasions. Chinook is a transport helicopter. You would have seen this elongated helicopter with twin rotors. It's a very unique design. Usually helicopters have one rotor, but Chinook has 2 rotors. It's mainly for transportation. It can again transport troops, help in evacuations, provide supplies to the troops in front areas, the forward areas. It can even carry heavy loads as well. You can suspend entire vehicles or artillery guns below the Chinook and carry it and deploy it right in the forward areas. We have procured M777 howitzers, which is an artillery gun. It's an advanced artillery gun. Right? We have recently signed a deal for the MH-60 Romeo helicopters, also called the Seahawk, produced by Sikorsky, which is again used for maritime surveillance and anti-submarine warfare. Even the Seahawk helicopters have submarine hunting capabilities. They can detect submarines and launch attacks against them and help in maritime reconnaissance. And recently, we have signed one more deal for procuring the most advanced drones from the US, the MQ-9B unmanned aerial vehicles, developed by General Atomics. We are procuring both the naval version and the Air Force version, called Sea Guardians and Sky Guardians. Recently, PM Modi visited US when this deal was finalized, and very soon, in a couple of years, you will see that these drones will be delivered to India. In fact, 2 of these drones are already in use in India. US gave 2 drones on lease for Indian Navy to try and test out the platform. Indian Navy has seen tremendous success in operating the Sea Guardian drones. It has saved precious fuel and human effort because these are remotely piloted drones, and you can even arm them. They can become armed drones carrying deadly missiles which can launch precision strikes. Right? So this is the defense cooperation that we have. Most of the advanced weapons that US has been supplied to India. This is what strengthens our abilities to take on China and counterbalance China in the region. Now coming to the last point, we have launched a major initiative called ICET, the Initiative on Critical and Emerging Technologies. It was launched this year in January 2023, but it was proposed last year at the Quad meeting in May 2022, when the last Quad meeting took place in Japan. That's why India-US proposed this initiative on critical emerging technologies. So this platform has been set up, it's already functional, and under ICET, we have set up a platform called IndusX. So let's see what these initiatives are. What does it deal with? So India-US will collaborate in some of the most advanced upcoming technologies, such as artificial intelligence, robotics, quantum computing, and even advanced wireless communication, which also includes semiconductor fabrication. As you know, today's world is being driven by critical emerging technologies. The future, right? The current fourth stage of industrial revolution will be driven by these critical emerging technologies. AI is already playing a role in every sector, right? We are on the verge of breakthrough in quantum computing. Semiconductors have become all the more critical. Advanced wireless telecommunication, including your 5G networks, 6G networks, are crucial for advances in communication technology. So these are the key areas where we will be collaborating. Because they not only have major civilian applications, they also have major defense and military applications. So Indian institutions and American institutions and our companies, private sector as well, they will collaborate with each other to work on these critical technologies. All right? So they've identified the focus areas. They want to become trusted technology partners to help out each other and build resilient global supply chains to ensure that we don't depend on China-dominated supply chains. Especially after the pandemic, this has become a concern. The world has realized to what extent we are dependent on China and the supply chains controlled by China. If you remember, I was discussing the same point under India-China economic relations as well. Right? So India-US are focused on creating parallel supply chains where they reduce their dependency on China, thus protecting their core interests. As you know, China is leveraging economic advantage to gain geopolitical advantages over its other rival countries. China is known to misuse the economic leverage it has, and it seeks to gain geopolitical leverage based on that. So India, US, even Japan, Australia, European countries, they all want to move away from China dependency. They want to reduce their dependency on China and the supply chains controlled by China. When the pandemic hit, right, and China went into a lockdown, the whole global supply chain got disrupted. In every country, key industries, key sectors got affected, and the supply chains were completely cut off. Right? We don't want this to happen in the future. Now imagine tensions increase with China. Let's say war breaks out with China and some Western country or China and India. China will have the power to destroy your economy by blocking out the supply chains. So this is the dependency that these countries want to reduce. That's why India, US have prioritized building supply chain resiliency, especially for some critical technologies, key components. India, Japan, and Australia, they have launched the Supply Chain Resilience Initiative. The Supply Chain Resilience Initiative. These three countries are collaborating in the Indo-Pacific to build parallel independent supply chains that are not dependent on Chinese manufacturing. India, US also have the same vision to create these parallel supply chains. We are working with European countries and European Union as well to pursue the same objective. We are working with France, UK, Germany, and major European powers, including European Union, to create such independent supply chains. Right? So India, US promise to help out each other in sharing of technology, in co-production, co-development, and expand this partnership by bringing all the entities together, be it government research institutions, right, or other public sector units like ISRO, DRDO from the Indian side, right, advanced scientific labs in India. They will collaborate with private businesses and academic institutions and work with their US partners. So private industry and tech and defense startups will also be a part of this ambitious initiative between India and US. All right. So they will prioritize research in AI, in artificial intelligence. They will come up with some common standards for artificial intelligence, including the need to regulate AI, as there are a lot of risks associated with artificial intelligence. They will form a new defense industrial cooperation to focus on joint production and development. India will not just be a buyer of American weapons. We will be jointly designing, developing, and producing them. This will be the biggest boost for our domestic defense industry. So an innovation bridge will be set up to connect the startups, the defense and technology startups on both the sides, to create this defense industrial complex. All right? The whole semiconductor ecosystem is also being prioritized, because right now India is many, many steps behind when it comes to semiconductor fabrication, chip fabrication. The major chip producers are China, Taiwan, South Korea, Japan, and the US. So they already have an intense competition here. China is one leading power when it comes to chip semiconductor fabrication, and you have these four countries: Taiwan, South Korea, Japan, and US. They're part of an alliance called Fab 4 or Chip 4. The Fab 4 alliance or the Chip 4 alliance. So these four democracies, right, which are major chip producers, they have formed an alliance to counter China's dominance. So this is happening at the global level. India is in no way to compete with them. We are not in the picture as well. We are many, many miles behind when it comes to semiconductor fabrication. But going forward, we want to correct this. That's why we have a national semiconductor mission. So here we are collaborating with the US, also with Japan, Taiwan, and South Korea going forward to ensure that India becomes a base for chip fabrication, which is a critical strategic technology. You're going to see more collaboration between ISRO and NASA. You already know how NASA has worked with ISRO, be it the Chandrayaan missions, right, and other critical technologies. Right? ISRO and NASA already have a close collaboration between them. So NASA is going to help India in the Gaganyaan mission. We have even signed the Artemis Accords, which will help in taking forward human spaceflight program between ISRO and NASA. There's a strong rumor that an Indian astronaut who's being prepped for Gaganyaan mission might be flown on a NASA project to the International Space Station. Just like Russia, the Soviet Union flew Rakesh Sharma, the first Indian astronaut, during the Cold War. Right? Maybe NASA or the US through its space program might take an Indian astronaut before we actually carry out the Gaganyaan mission. Right? That is India's first human spaceflight program. So NASA will help ISRO in the technologies needed in developing the re-entry module, the space medicine, space clothing that is needed for the astronauts. The first batch of Indian astronauts, they're already getting trained with Russian help. Russia is a major supporter with France. They're already backing our Gaganyaan mission. right? So NASA will also play a big role, and most likely, as we've signed Artemis Accords, it could help India send an astronaut even before Gaganyaan mission on a NASA flight to the International Space Station. In advanced communication like 5G, 6G, and Open RAN network, India and US are going to collaborate. Is that clear? So these are the areas of focus, including quantum computing as well. So there has been a lot of progress that two countries have seen in this domain. Now they want to build upon this, create more public-private partnership, work on these critical areas from AI to space to chip fabrication, 5G, 6G networks, etc. Right? Recently, when Prime Minister Modi visited US in March 2023, they have established a semiconductor supply chain where US will help India to create chip manufacturing hubs in the country. Understood? US companies will be investing in chip fabrication in India. They're moving away from their factories in China. They want to cut their dependency on China, and we might see the rise of these companies in India, which will produce these chips domestically in the country. We've also signed a deal for an advanced jet engine, the GE F414 engine from General Electric, to power LCA Tejas, to power the Mark II variant of LCA Tejas, which is indigenously developed by HAL and the Aeronautical Development Agency. Right? LCA is likely to see a bigger role in Indian Air Force and also in the Indian Navy. Right? Air Force has already inducted few Tejas aircraft. Going forward, we will scale up the induction of Tejas both into Air Force and the Indian Navy. One area where we are facing the problem is the engine, the very heart of the fighter jet. So US has promised to support India with the GE engines, where the technology itself will be transferred to India. We'll not just buy the engines, we'll produce them domestically in India. Right? So that is the kind of progress that you're seeing. So we have set up a platform called IndusX, which is under ICET. Under ICET, IndusX has been launched. It was launched in June 2023 to accelerate defense cooperation, to promote defense innovation, defense technological cooperation. Understood? All the existing export barriers, regulatory norms of US will be simplified. So US can share advanced defense technology to India. They are operationalizing this innovation bridge, the defense innovation bridge, that will connect our companies, government institutions, academic institutions together to speed up the collaboration between our defense industries. Alright, so IndusX is specifically meant for accelerating defense collaboration, to facilitate joint design, development, production, and sharing of defense technology. So this will function under ICET itself, under the initiative on critical emerging technologies. So IndusX will focus on adopting critical emerging technologies in defense applications, like applying AI for military purposes, applying advanced communication into military applications. So that would be the focus of IndusX, which is an initiative under ICET. So these are the latest developments in India-US relations. Is that clear? Apart from this, we have a very strong trading economic relationship. Right? As I told you, US is a very big export market for India. We have a trade surplus with the US because that is how much we export to the US. We export software, we export agricultural commodities, several manufactured goods, right? Even medicines. We have a huge market, gems and jewelry, then even textiles. So it's a massive market for India. Along with that, we collaborate in climate change as well, in dealing with climate change. That is in clean renewable energy, be it solar, wind, then other alternate fuels, green hydrogen, green ammonia, etc. These have become priority areas for India-US. Right? We're working very closely together in all these advanced areas. Even human rights, then education, healthcare. Right? These are all focus areas today. Even for vaccine development, for example, right? In studying diseases, in developing advanced drugs and lines of treatment, there is close collaboration between our healthcare industries. Education is a top focus, especially to help Indian students. Right? Each year, few lakh Indian students are traveling to the US to study in American universities. They form a strong cultural bond. And the diaspora in US is a crucial link. There are at least 3 million plus Indians. That is the strength of our diaspora in the US. They can exert a positive influence on the US government. In fact, when they signed the nuclear deal in 2004-2005, the Manmohan Singh government leveraged the Indian community to put a positive influence on the George Bush government, which helped in cracking the deal. Is that clear? Indian community leaders who are influential in the US were used to influence the US government in favor of India. And these days it has increased. The Modi government is even more serious about engaging the diaspora. Right? The Indian community in the US, they've contributed immensely. They've aided America's rise. In every key sector in the US, it's Indian workers who are powering America's rise. From tech to healthcare to space. In all the key sectors, Indian professionals are playing a critical role. So we want to drive this relationship forward, the close cultural ties that we have, the economic ties, the strategic ties. So this, no wonder, is the defining partnership of this century. Right? It's not just about countering China. That's one part of it. Other than that, there are many, many areas of collaboration, and that's what makes this a diversified relationship. That's what makes it a defining partnership for this century. All right? Now, related to this, we will discuss the next country, that is Russia. This is all connected. Now, from here onwards, today and in the next class as well, the last class, whatever small topics we are left with, they're all interconnected. Like whatever we studied with US, China, will apply here with Russia. We are looking at some major global developments right now. This discussion is different slightly from what we discussed under neighborhood. Right? Under India neighborhood, we were restricted to our bilateral ties, some regional geopolitics. Now we are looking at global level geopolitics, where everything comes together. There's a complex connection between all these events and developments. Now let us look at our ties with Russia, because this is the right time to talk about Russia as well. It will give you a very good idea as to how relations have developed between India and Russia. What is the current status? What challenges are we facing? Right? How will US-Russia rivalry affect us? How will the Western standoff with Russia affect India? That is the prime focus of this discussion. So once I finish this, I'll take all your questions. I want to complete these topics in one go so that you have a holistic understanding, and then we can look at all your doubts and questions. So first, let's get a brief look at history. What is the background to India-Russia relations? Let's take a look at that, and then we will talk about the current relations, the current issues. See, Russia, as you know, is the successor state to Soviet Union. So Russia came into being in 1991, the current modern Russian state. So prior to 1991, during the Cold War, it was the Soviet Union. Right? Soviet Union was a massive country stretching from Eastern Europe to the Pacific. Right? It's one of the most significant Eurasian powers of that era. It included not just Russia, but also the whole of Central Asia, Eurasia, and Eastern Europe. All these were part of this massive country called the USSR, or the Soviet Union. So right from the beginning, India has had cordial, friendly ties with Soviet Union. Even when India was non-aligned, from 1947 to 1971, India remained a non-aligned power. We didn't align with the Americans, nor with the Soviets. We chose the middle path. Right? Even during this period, the Soviet Union was cordial to India, friendly towards India. This is one difference you notice between US and Soviet Union. US was pressurizing India. It was forcing India to join the Western Bloc against the Soviets. Right? The US could never understand India's non-aligned position. But Soviet Union was different. Soviet Union actually sought closer ties with all the third world countries. The newly independent colonies, the backward poor countries in Asia and Africa, they became the focus of Soviet Union during the Cold War. And especially with India, the Soviet Union started out on a very friendly note, extending direct support to India on some critical matters. As you know, our freedom struggle and also our constitution has some connections with the Soviet Union. Be it the Bolshevik Revolution, right? It did inspire our freedom struggle to an extent. Some principles of Bolshevik Revolution did inspire Indian leaders, from Prime Minister Nehru to Subhash Chandra Bose, Sardar Patel, and many top Indian leaders. They took inspiration from the Soviet Union and the Bolshevik Revolution, right? Later, Soviet principles, communist socialist principles, found its way into our constitution as well, right? The very concept of socialism was added into the preamble, making India a socialist republic, right? We drew a lot of inspiration into the constitution. Several features were added into the Indian constitution. So apart from this, close ties developed between the leaders. Prime Minister Nehru would visit Soviet Union, right? Even though we were non-aligned, we didn't strategically align with Soviet Union against the US. But still, Soviet Union started giving a lot of support to India, especially diplomatic support. This is something we craved badly at the United Nations. Remember, I told you that on important issues like Kashmir and other disputes of India, Western countries led by US and UK, they were largely biased against India. Whereas Soviet Union gave complete support to India on the Kashmir issue. Right from the initial Pakistani invasion, right, the first war, the 1947 war, and the negotiations that happened in the UN regarding the ceasefire line and Karachi agreement, and all the events after that. In these issues related to Kashmir, Soviet Union stood as a friend for India. While US and UK were displaying a Pakistani bias favoring Pakistan, Soviet Union stood with India, backed India on the Kashmir dispute. Later, when India annexed Goa by fighting Portugal, it was made into a big issue at the UN where India was being targeted by the European countries. The West European democracies were targeting India. They were calling India an expansionist power, aggressive power, because Portugal was refusing to give up Goa. I hope you know that we fought a war. It was a limited conflict through which we threw out the Portuguese, right? So Portugal cut off ties with India as well. That's how bad things were. Our relations were completely affected with Portugal as we threw Portuguese out of Goa through a limited conflict. As a result of this war, where we captured Goa from Portugal, European countries turned against India. They all backed Portugal. The issue was brought up at European organizations and United Nations, and India was targeted. India was accused of being an aggressive power and expansionist power. So at this crucial point, it was the Soviet Union which backed India, supported India. It defeated all these resolutions against India. Even during the 1962 war with China, Soviet Union declared neutrality in the conflict. Now imagine how big this is. China was a communist country, aligned at one point with Soviets. Even though Soviets and the Chinese had their own issues as well, they had their own rivalries going on. But still, in the Cold War, all the communist countries were aligned together. And despite that, Soviet Union didn't support China. It became neutral in the conflict. It declared official neutrality, saying it will not interfere, it will not meddle, it will not take sides between India and China. So that shows the commitment the Soviet Union had towards India, a principled commitment to build stronger ties with India. Understood? So from here onwards, a strategic partnership started developing. In 1961-62, we procured our first defense platform from Soviet Union, the MiG fighter jets, the MiG-21, which became the backbone of the Indian Air Force for several decades. And even today, there are few MiGs in operation. Right, from MiG-21 to MiG-29, there are few MiG fighter jets even today used by the Indian Navy and Indian Air Force. So from here onwards, closer military relations started developing, and Soviet Union would transfer the technology. In that era, Western countries were only looking to exploit smaller countries by selling weapons to them. They would never share technology. They would simply sell the weapons to them. But Soviet Union shared the technology so that we could domestically produce and maintain a mix, which would reduce the cost for India. Right? That is what created a basic domestic ecosystem in India. If HAL could thrive, it's because Russians transferred the technology, leading to domestic production of MiGs and domestic servicing and maintenance. In 1965 conflict, we studied how Soviet Union mediated as a neutral mediator between India and Pakistan while negotiating the Tashkent Agreement. Right? The Soviet Union helped end this war with Pakistan by acting as a neutral mediator. And then you all know what kind of support Soviet Union gave during the 1971 conflict. Right? When US was threatening India, we signed the Treaty of Peace and Friendship, which led India to move away from non-alignment. We abandoned non-alignment under US threat and clearly sided with Soviet Union. The Soviet Union promised military support to India to counter the American threat. And the Soviets actually did that. Soviet Navy was deployed in the Indian Ocean to scare off the American Navy, to push out the American Navy from Bay of Bengal so India could freely target Pakistan and liberate Bangladesh. Right? This was tremendous military support given by the Soviets, along with full diplomatic support to India. Following this, as India became aligned with Soviet Union, it gave full support to our nuclear program, our space program, and to our military modernization. Throughout 1970s, 80s, and 90s, in those 3 decades, it was Soviet Union which was the primary military supplier to India. Almost all the weapons we had, from battle tanks to ammunition, assault rifles, to missiles and rockets, aircraft and naval vessels and submarines, everything was of Soviet origin. Most of it, at least. It would directly support our nuclear and space program, including covert support, where Soviet Union apparently has secretly transferred nuclear material and nuclear secrets to India. While the rest of the world was targeting India, right, pushing India to sign non-proliferation treaty, US and UK especially, they were forcing India to sign NPT. India rejected it. We said we'll never sign it, we'll develop nuclear weapons. The one who supported India at this point was Soviet Union. Not just diplomatically, but covert support existed to back our nuclear program and space program. Right? So this support was critical for the Indian leaders, right? Even for the ISRO, right, which was still in its initial stages, the Department of Atomic Energy. They were all led by legendary scientists like Homi Bhabha, Vikram Sarabhai. When the initial foundation was being laid from the days of Prime Minister Nehru to Prime Minister Indira Gandhi, the support from Soviet Union was crucial to back these efforts of these individuals, these great individuals, to which would allow India to later become a nuclear and space power. Right? So that is the kind of role Soviet Union has played. And even after it collapsed, even after it disintegrated in 1991 and the Cold War came to an end, the successor state, that is Russia, has continued the same relationship. Rather, it has built upon this relationship and scaled this relationship. Of course, when Soviet Union collapsed, India lost a great partner. Right? India felt alone. India felt it had lost one of its most important strategic diplomatic partners. That is what pushed P.V. Narasimha Rao to diversify our foreign policy after 91. Until then, we had become too dependent on Soviet Union, especially at the UN, to get global support on issues that matter to India. We largely relied on Soviet backing. Now Soviet Union didn't exist anymore, and Russia would not be the same initially. Russia, which was born out of Soviet Union, right, wouldn't be the same major power as it was before. So time had come for India to look for new partners as well, while continuing to build a strong partnership with Russia. That's why the Rasmussen government diversified our foreign policy, set up ties with Israel, right? Then focused more on Africa and Latin America, and launched the Look East policy to focus on Southeast and East Asia. So we started building back the India-Russia relations. In the last 3 decades, in the last 30 years, Russia has again been a major defense partner and also a critical partner in the field of nuclear energy. Russia was one of the few countries which did not criticize the Pokhran tests. When India carried out the Pokhran nuclear test in 1998, it was one of the few powers, along with France and Israel, which didn't criticize India's nuclear tests. Is that clear? Russia wouldn't join the economic technological sanctions against India. It would continue the support, and you can see Russian projects that are still ongoing. The Kundan nuclear project. So Russia basically extended full civilian support for nuclear energy. So it has supplied nuclear material, uranium to India, nuclear reactors to India. It's directly involved in setting up the Kundan nuclear plant. It's looking at many more nuclear plants in the future as well. And it has supplied some of the advanced military platforms that we have, which is the backbone of our armed forces, from the Sukhoi 30 fighter jets to the T-90 battle tank, the BrahMos cruise missile, which is a joint project. It even leased a nuclear submarine called INS Chakra, so that Indian Navy could train on how to operate nuclear submarines before we could launch our indigenous nuclear submarines under Arihant class. Before INS Arihant could be inducted, right? Indian Navy wanted some training experience, practical experience in operating a nuclear powered submarine. For that purpose, Russia gave us a nuclear submarine. No country will do that. Countries might donate diesel electric submarines or other traditional conventional submarines. No country would donate a nuclear powered submarine. But Russia did that, right? It gave it on lease. We of course paid for it. It gave it on lease, and we used INS Chakra for training the Navy to operate nuclear powered submarines. The sole aircraft carrier that we had until recently, INS Vikramaditya, is again of Soviet-Russian origin. It's an old Soviet aircraft carrier that we procured, refurbished, and deployed it in India. Right? Until INS Vikrant was inducted, which is an indigenous aircraft carrier. This was the only aircraft carrier that we had in recent times. So this is the kind of military collaboration, the close strategic ties that we see between India and Russia. All right. So no wonder India believes that Russia is a very reliable partner, a traditional partner. It has been there for India during every difficult time. When no one else was standing with India, it was Russia or Soviet Union which was always standing with India. From Kashmir to Goa to nuclear space program to military modernization. Right? In all these critical areas, Russia or Soviet Union have been completely in favor of India. So this is what defines our approach to Russia today. Russia has broken several international laws. It has become an aggressive, irrational power. That's the reality. But still, India gives support to Russia because of this. All right. So under Putin, under Vladimir Putin, the relations were scaled up. It was elevated to a special privileged strategic partnership in 2010. And Russia gave full support to India as well to join all the export control regimes. Just like US was supporting India, Russia also played a positive role in influencing other members to admit India. So it has given full support for our NSG membership. It played a role in helping India join MTCR, Australia Group, and Wassenaar arrangement. Most recently, we have signed a deal for S-400 missiles, also called the Triumph missile, which is an air defense system. It's an advanced Russian air defense system, which will help India against China. It will help India secure its airspace to target any aerial threats from China and even from Pakistan. So Russia has supplied the S-400. It has already supplied, we have already deployed them as well towards the Chinese and Pakistani borders. Right? We are also collaborating in the production of AK-57 rifles, assault rifles. The latest variant of this is AK-203. You would have heard about the AK series of assault rifles, from AK-47 to AK-57 and AK-203. These are some of the most sophisticated assault rifles used by armed forces, even by terrorists as well. Right? So India is looking to domestically produce AK-203 assault rifles, and Russia has transferred the technology to India. It will be produced domestically in Uttar Pradesh near Amethi. A massive ammunition factory has come up, a defense factory, which will domestically produce the AK-203 assault rifles. We'll be producing a number of them. Several lakh assault rifles will be produced in India, which will arm our armed forces and even our paramilitary forces. All right. Russia is backing our Gaganyaan mission, as I was mentioning earlier. Russia is helping in astronaut training. The initial batch of Indian astronauts have been chosen for the mission from Indian Air Force. Few IAF pilots have been shortlisted, and they've been sent on advanced training to Russia, where Roscosmos has given us astronaut training to the future Indian astronauts. It's also sharing other technologies related to a manned space mission, because human spaceflight is very challenging. So with regard to space clothing, space medicine, then the crew module, which will make a re-entry, right? The arrestor module and the final deployment. In all these key technologies for the Gaganyaan mission, Russia is backing up ISRO. All right. So that is the kind of partnership that you find today between India and Russia. So India also has started returning the favor. Now that we are a major economy and a military power, in the last 15-20 years, we are returning this favor back to Russia by helping out Russia as well. For example, Russian President Putin, he wanted to focus on the Russian Far East region. The Russian Far East, which is your Siberia region basically, the Siberian Peninsula, is a very remote and backward area of Russia. Let me show you the map first so that you'll understand this better. See, Russia is this massive country stretching from Eastern Europe to the Pacific. Russia has this huge province, the Far East province, which is your Siberia region. This is very, very vast area. This area is larger than India. India will fit easily into the Siberia region. It's that big. In such a large region, you have very, very few people. The population is very less because the climatic conditions here is very hostile. It is inhospitable. You have permafrost conditions over here because of the Arctic wind, the cold blast that comes from the Arctic. Siberia is permanently frozen. The top soil is frozen. That's called permafrost. Your top layer of the soil itself is permanently frozen here. Right? It's not just about your regular snowfall and ice sheets. The top layer of the soil itself is frozen. So survival here is very challenging. Temperatures will be -40, -50 sometimes. Right? So population is very less. Development is very less. but there are immense resources which can be exploited. There is gold, there is coal present, some precious minerals are present here. Can you see this region here? This region which extends to Pacific towards Japan. This is where you have the Kamchatka Peninsula. The Kamchatka Peninsula and the Sakhalin region. These areas are blessed with resources from oil and gas. At Sakhalin, you have oil gas reserves present over here. In Kamchatka, you have coal and precious minerals, including gold, that is present. All right. And Russia has a territorial dispute as well with Japan over here, over these islands. Do you know which islands are these? The disputed islands between Russia and Japan. Very good. This is the Kuril Island, the Kuril group of islands, which are disputed between Russia and Japan. It's a dispute since the Soviet era. After Second World War, Soviet Union captured all these islands, which previously was Japanese territory. Even now it remains under Russian control largely, and it is a source of dispute between Russia and Japan. So in such a vital region, resources are present, right? From here, you can access the Arctic as well. Don't forget this point. There is access available to the northern route. What is the northern route? It is the polar shipping route in the North Pole, which is of great strategic significance today. It's a vital shipping lane which is opening up because of global warming. As the ice caps and glaciers are melting in Arctic, many Arctic powers are exploring this region. It is blessed with resources. Arctic has plenty of resources. So intense competition has broken out between Arctic countries, including US, Canada, then Denmark, Finland, Norway, Sweden, right? All these countries are in competition with Russia. Even other powers like China, Japan, European countries are also competing here, right? There's a body which governs this region called the Arctic Council. It includes the Arctic states, the countries which are part of the Arctic Circle. So US, Canada, Russia, then your Denmark, Norway, Finland, Sweden, right? And Iceland. These countries are members of the Arctic Council. But other powers have observer status, including India. India is an observer to Arctic Council. China is an observer. Japan, UK, France, they're all observer states to Arctic Council. So as the glaciers ice caps are melting in the Arctic, the northern shipping route is being opened. Arctic countries are deploying their navies. They are using icebreaker ships to break the ice sheets and clear the path to pave the way for shipping in the region. So this is the future route. It's already being used and it holds great potential for the future. So India also wants to compete in this region. And don't forget, China has traditional influence all across this region here, right? In East Asia and also towards the North Pacific. China is already a dominant power. China has already extended its reach to the Arctic as well. All right. So this is where India is collaborating with Japan and Russia to exert our own influence in East Asia and North Pacific and also to reach out to the Arctic. So Russia wants assistance in the Far East region. As Russia has faced a lot of economic challenges, it's not able to explore the resources present in Siberia. All right, the region is backward. Development has been affected here, very less population. It needs more people, it needs money and capital and technology. So this became a priority for Putin, and that is why he organized the Eastern Economic Forum. Eastern Economic Forum was focused on bringing investments into the Russian Far East region. So Russia invited many close friends, including India, and PM Modi participated in the Eastern Economic Forum Summit in 2019. During this summit, India promised full assistance to Russia to explore this resource-rich region, and we have announced $1 billion line of credit to carry out projects in the Far East region. This policy of India, where we are investing $1 billion with increased private participation and diplomatic presence in Siberia, this is being dubbed as the Act Far East policy of India, where we are pushing our influence further beyond East Asia, North Pacific, all the way extending to the Arctic route. This policy of India focused on the Russian Siberia region, the Far East region, is being dubbed informally as the Act Far East policy of India. It's seen as an extension of our Act East and Indo-Pacific policy. We already have a consulate here at Vladivostok. It's a major port city. If you come back to the map, just look at here. You can see Vladivostok over here. This is Vladivostok, a major Russian city here in Siberia, which opens to the Pacific and the East Asia region. So Russia has a major port as well and a naval base. So India was one of the first countries in the world to open a consulate in this remote region. In such a remote region, we set up a consulate in 1992 itself. We became the first country in the world to set up a diplomatic mission in Vladivostok. Because since then, we have had economic interest in the region. There are Indian companies already invested here. We were focusing on Russian resources in Siberia. So ONGC has invested in the Sakhalin oil and gas reserves. We have a stake in the Sakhalin gas and reserves, oil and gas reserves. Tata Power has a thermal coal mine in Kamchatka. There are other Indian companies already exploring gold and other minerals in Russian Far East. So that is why India was an important participant in the Eastern Economic Forum. And we have announced a loan, a concessional loan to Russia of $1 billion. It will help Indian investments. It will help our companies as well to get hold of these strategic resources and increase influence in East Asia and North Pacific and the Arctic route, where we can counter the Chinese influence. We have also proposed a maritime route, a maritime corridor to connect Vladivostok with Chennai, to create a more shorter, efficient route to link India and Russia. Remember, we have studied under INSTC project that one challenge we have faced between India and Russia is connectivity. We rely on this long route towards the west. If you have to send goods from India to Russia, you have to take the western route to Atlantic Ocean, right? That is via Red Sea, Suez Canal, across Atlantic and Europe, and then reach Russia. That route is a very long route. It takes around 45 to 60 days for any shipments. So the time is more, the cost involved is higher. So it's not a viable route. That's why India-Russia trade is not very strong. Even though we are such close partners and defense trade is high, our economic relations are very minimal. So that is why India-Russia is exploring a new shipping route from the east. Instead of relying on this traditional western route across Atlantic and Europe, we are opening a new maritime link towards east to connect Chennai directly with Vladivostok. It will reduce the shipping time. There's a big difference in the distance. Look at the difference. From almost 9,000 nautical miles to just around 5,500 nautical miles. The travel time will reduce, the cost will reduce, and it will boost India-Russia trade. And it will drive our investments and involvement in the Russian Far East region. So this is how India also has helped Russia in its own small way, right? So this important partnership today is facing the biggest challenge because of what Russia has done with Ukraine. Last year's invasion of Ukraine by Russia has disrupted the global order. It has destabilized Europe and the global economy. It has had a huge economic impact even on India, and it is posing a big diplomatic dilemma for India. India has been caught in between Russia and Western countries. It's become one of the biggest challenges we have faced in recent times. Correct? So Russia, without a doubt, has broken international law. Russia is the violator here. It has violated UN Charter by disrespecting the sovereignty of Ukraine, by invading Ukraine without a valid reason. So last year when Putin launched this so-called special military operation, he said the mission was to eradicate Nazis in Ukraine, to rebuild Ukraine, to protect the Russian population. These are all fantasies of Putin, right? These threats don't exist in Ukraine. The threat in Ukraine for Russia is the pro-Western government, the rising Western influence, the rising influence of NATO, European Union, and US is what triggered this conflict. Is that clear? No matter what the justification is, it is true that Western countries were poking Russia. The US especially was deliberately triggering Russia repeatedly since 1991. This war didn't happen this last year. There is a history behind it. The Cold War didn't actually end in 1991. A new phase of the Cold War began in 1991, where the rivalries continued between US and Russia. Their covert games, their geopolitical diplomatic games continued after 1991. It is this rivalry which today has resulted in a devastating conflict in Ukraine. So the intervention of US and European countries through NATO and EU is what pushed Russia to attack Ukraine, right? So Russia definitely was triggered. Its interests were under threat, but that cannot be a justification for a brutal war. You can't justify breaching the sovereignty integrity of an independent nation based on these reasoning and excuses. That's not tolerated under international law. So without a doubt, Russia has violated international law. It's broken the UN Charter, and according to all available records and evidence, it has committed brutal atrocities. Large-scale killings of civilians. It's accused of war crimes and crimes against humanity, and triggering one of the biggest humanitarian crises that we have seen in recent times. So India knows all of this, right? Indian government, of course, knows what has happened. But despite knowing this, we need to take a balanced position because this is not our conflict. It's not our conflict to fight, right? Any intervention here against Russia will only harm India. And also it will threaten the deep-rooted trust relationship, the trusted relationship that we have. Soviet Union, Russia, they've always stood with India without questioning, right? On Kashmir issue, even with China, with Pakistan, against Western countries, they've always backed India without any conditions. Now it is time for India to return the favor in national interests. It's unfortunate. I know. That's why I told you in the beginning itself. IR is very cold-hearted. The world of diplomacy, the world of geopolitics is cold-hearted. Sometimes values, principles, ethics, morality may have to be kept aside to look after bigger interests, national interests. It's again where you draw the line. So if you look at this from India's perspective, just interfering here or criticizing Russia, joining the sanctions that other countries have imposed, or voting against Russia will not fetch us anything. It will not end Russia's war in Ukraine. Right? It's not that India can mediate this conflict, or we can work out a settlement, or we can protect Ukrainians. We can't do that. We're not in that position. Right? Russia will neither listen to India nor will it be affected by Indian policy. So in that case, when we can't really intervene, when we can't really protect Ukraine, right? When we can't really put any kind of pressure or influence on Russia, what's the point of interfering? What's the point of taking a stand against Russia just for the sake of it? So it is better to protect the traditional relationship and also return the favor as well, as Russia has stood with India all the time. Even now, Russia is a major military partner, a key supplier of weapons, a major oil supplier as well, which is crucial for our energy security, and a diplomatic partner at the global level. So it's better to protect those core relations at least. That is why India has taken a balanced position on this conflict. Right? If we have taken a balanced position, in a way, we are indirectly favoring Russia. We are supporting the Russian war indirectly. So let's see what really happened. You're looking at the map of Europe over here from the Cold War period, when an Iron Curtain existed in Central Europe. The Cold War had divided Europe into Western and Eastern Europe. All these countries in blue, they are your Western democracies, aligned with US and NATO. Right? As you know, NATO is a military alliance formed after the Second World War. It was a direct initiative by the US and West European countries to counter the Soviet power bloc. Under NATO military alliance, you have a principle called the principle of collective defense. Meaning, NATO members have to support each other if they are attacked by a non-NATO country. If a third country attacks any NATO country, they will treat this as an attack on their own country. Now imagine, let's say someone attacked UK. This will be treated as a war against all the NATO countries, and all NATO countries will mobilize troops, and go to war against that third country which attacked UK. That's the principle of collective defense. NATO members also have obligations to deploy troops, missiles, and weapons of NATO. They need to host NATO troops, NATO weapons, and missiles on their soil. That's also an obligation. Like Germany has a major military base, the Ramstein base, right, which is a major staging ground for NATO forces, along with the American forces. So we are providing a base for NATO troops and weapons. Basically, you're giving presence for foreign troops, foreign missiles, foreign weapon systems. That is how NATO protects the defense of the grouping. It exercises the principle of collective defense. This principle has been used only once when the 9/11 attacks happened. When Al-Qaeda attacked US invoked this principle. All NATO countries, that's why they got together to form a coalition force to attack Afghanistan. That's the only time the principle of collective defense has been used. But during the Cold War, right, when these divisions existed between democracies and communist states, you saw this major divide here in Central and in Eastern Europe. They were all under Soviet communist influence. This was the Eastern Bloc. Apart from the USSR, right, there were other Central and East European countries from Poland to Hungary to Romania, Bulgaria, and even East Germany. Germany itself was divided into West and East Germany, right? So all these were aligned with communist Soviet Union. They represented the Eastern Bloc. So a literal physical divide came up in Europe called the Iron Curtain, where the division existed here between West and East. A physical barrier was created with fencing, benches, deployment of troops and weapons, marking the physical divide of the Cold War. That is called the Iron Curtain of Europe, that divided Europe into West and East during the Cold War. Now, whatever you see here on the East has always been under Soviet communist influence until 1991. But gradually, as communism declined, communism started seeing a defeat. We saw changes happening from 1989 itself. Communism as an idea had failed. Socialist model of economy had failed, leading to corruption, red tapeism, collapse of the economy, where the state controlled the whole economy. It was not able to meet the needs and demands of the people, leading to full-fledged economic collapse. So by 1980s, communism lost its appeal. The communist socialist model started failing in Central and Eastern Europe. That is why these countries, they moved away from Eastern Bloc. From Poland to Romania to Hungary, Czechoslovakia, all of them, then Bulgaria, they all moved out from Soviet influence. They transitioned towards democracies. They abandoned communism and moved out. In 1989, we saw the Berlin Wall. that marked the divide in Berlin between West and East being toned down. The Berlin Wall was toned down, leading to the reunification of Germany. As communism suffered a defeat in Central Europe, Germany reunified. Democracy started gaining, Western democracy started gaining influence. So gradually, we started seeing the expansion of Western democracies towards Central and Eastern Europe. So the former Soviet influence areas were now being taken over by Western democracies led by US, UK, France, Germany. All right, by 1991, the Soviet Union itself disintegrated, collapsed, leading to the formation of all the new countries that we have seen, from your Baltic countries to Ukraine, right, to Georgia, Azerbaijan, Armenia, the Eurasian countries, Central Asian countries. They were all born out of Soviet Union when it collapsed in 91. So this phase of the Cold War ended. Western countries won the Cold War, Soviet Union had been defeated. But the rivalries continued. It took a new format. The Cold War didn't really end. We started seeing the second version of the Cold War, a Cold War 2.0, between West and Russia, primarily led by the US, with backing from European countries against Russia. So what they did was, they focused on Russia's areas of influence. They wanted to take away these areas of influence from Russia. In these regions, the Baltic region, this is the Baltic region that faces the Baltic Sea. It includes your Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania. This is the Baltic Sea, right? And you have your Baltic countries. They were Soviet states at one point, Soviet republics. Same with Belarus, Ukraine, right? They were all part of Soviet Union. So Russia automatically believed that these areas should be under the traditional influence of Russia. And there's nothing wrong with that. Just like India wants Indian Ocean to be our area of influence. Even the Americans, will the US like if someone interferes in the Caribbean or in South America or in Central America? During Cold War, when Soviet Union did that, when Soviet Union meddled in Cuba and Central America and South America, the US had retaliated against these countries. Same with Russia, any big power would do the same. So what US and European countries did was, they expanded NATO. They rapidly expanded NATO and also European Union. You see this eastward march, eastward expansion happening. Post 1991, several countries from Central Eastern Europe, they became part of NATO. Not just Poland, not just Romania, Hungary, and others, but even the Balkan states from the Balkan mountain region over here. These are the Balkan states in Southeast Europe. All right, the Baltic states here in Northeast Europe. And the former Soviet states, that is the Baltic states, they were former Soviet states. They all started joining NATO one by one. This was the eastward expansion of NATO. Parallelly, European Union also expanded. The EU's membership expanded rapidly post 1992. So all the Baltic countries, Balkan states, Central European countries, and some East European countries, they started joining these Western blocs. Right? NATO is a military alliance, European Union is a political economic grouping. So this spread of Western influence towards Russia's area of influence is what triggered Russia, is what threatened Russia. Russia was concerned. See now, as Latvia, Estonia, Lithuania joined NATO and EU, NATO countries now shared a direct border here with Russia. If Russia, let's say, were to attack one of them for some reason, all NATO countries will invoke principle of collective defense. They'll treat it as an attack against all of them, and they'll be bound to fight against Russia for that, which means Russia will be deterred from ever acting against any neighboring country. In Poland, the US started deploying air defense missiles to undercut the nuclear weapons of Russia, to take away the nuclear deterrence of Russia. In Poland and also in Hungary, in Romania, NATO troops were stationed, that is American troops primarily, along with American air defense systems, basically missiles which could intercept any Russian ballistic missiles which are fired with possibly nuclear warheads. So once our air defense layer is created here, right next to Russia, it will undercut Russia's nuclear deterrence. Russia will never be able to succeed in a nuclear conflict if a credible air defense is created over here. So all these developments were threatening Russian influence. But the final trigger, the final nail in the coffin, was Ukraine turning pro-West. Since Soviet era, Ukraine was the most important constituent for the Soviet Union. Ukraine is a large region, a major agricultural power, one of the top food-producing countries in the world, critical for food security. It is home to several industries of the Soviet era, including defense industries. It has plenty of resources. It has nuclear plants of Soviet era, of Soviet origin, right? And it has a Russian population of Russian ethnicity, especially in eastern Ukraine. So these were all the factors that still bound Russia to Ukraine. Until 2010, Ukraine firmly remained pro-Russia because there was a pro-Russian leader that Russia had installed. Even though the Ukrainian people did not like Russian interference, they wanted to be more independent of Russia. Russia had always interfered in Ukraine, propping up pro-Russian government and a pro-Russian leader. But this was challenged. There was a major revolution that happened, the Euromaidan protests, the so-called Orange Revolution, where Ukrainians protested against the pro-Russian government. All right, between 2010 and 2014, we saw the rise of pro-West and pro-democracy sentiments in Ukraine. Citizens obviously wanted democracy. They didn't want to be under pro-Russian dictators. All right, so citizens were acting against Russian influence, protesting for change in government to throw out pro-Russian dictators. Western countries started capitalizing on it. They started backing the pro-democracy movement. Their intelligence agencies, the CIA, the MI6, and even French and German intelligence, they would collectively back the pro-democracy movement and they played a role in the Euromaidan protests, which led to a change in government. By 2014, there was a massive change that happened. The pro-Western government came up in Ukraine. The democracy protesters won, right? The pro-Russian leader was thrown out, pro-Russian government was brought down in the next elections, and a pro-West government was installed, which rejected all Russian groups and initiatives. Remember, in Central Asia topic, we had studied the Eastern Economic Union, right? I told you how Russia wanted to bring Soviet republics together to form a free trade area, a customs union. Ukraine was supposed to join that. The previous leader who was pro-Russia had agreed. But now, because of the government change and a rise in pro-West, pro-democracy tendency, Ukraine rejected the Eurasian Economic Union. It refused to join the Eurasian Economic Union. Ukraine said no. The new government said no, that will not join such Russian groups and initiatives. And parallelly, it started showing interest in EU and NATO. Ukraine started considering EU membership with maybe NATO membership. So this is what triggered Russia. In 2014, when these changes happened and when pro-West Ukraine government rejected Eurasian Economic Union and inclined towards NATO and EU, That is when Russia retaliated for the first time by annexing the Crimean Peninsula. It fully annexed Crimea, strategic region in the Black Sea. Crimea is a Ukrainian territory. There's an important naval base, the Sevastopol naval base. This is critical for accessing the Mediterranean. For Ukraine and Russia to reach Mediterranean Sea, right, to send their exports and to exert influence in Mediterranean and West Asia, Black Sea is critical. Sevastopol port and Crimea is critical. This important region was captured by Russia entirely, and immediately Russian intelligence agencies they sponsored a covert war in eastern Ukraine. This region is called the Donbas region, where you have Donetsk and Luhansk provinces. This is where you find a strong Russian ethnic population who are pro-Russia, and Russian agencies they sponsored a separatist movement. They backed the rebels to trigger a separatist war against Ukraine, which completely destabilized eastern Ukraine. Russia even launched a cyber war to cripple Ukrainian infrastructure from 2014 itself. So this is what triggered the tensions to the next level. As soon as Russia annexed Crimea, it was thrown out from the G8 group, and that is how G8 became G7. Western countries were working with Russia through G8. But as Russia annexed Crimea, it was thrown out of the G8, it became G7, a Western group of advanced industrialized economies. Western countries brought sanctions against Russia for capturing Crimea and for sponsoring a separatist war in Ukraine. So this was continuing. The separatist war continued for the last 8 years. Russia fully occupied Crimea and set up Sevastopol as Russian naval base. It had come under full Russian control. It even built a strategic bridge, the Kerch Bridge, to connect Russian mainland with Crimea across the Kerch Strait in the Sea of Azov. The Sea of Azov and Black Sea, they are connected by this narrow strait here, called the Kerch Strait. Across this narrow strait, the strategic bridge was built, giving full access to Russian forces, turning Crimea into a military base for Russia. All right, so things had changed completely. This is how the events developed in the last few years. Eastern Ukraine was fully destabilized with pro-Russian separatist movement going on, Crimea under full Russian control, and a covert war between Ukraine and Russia raging over the last few years. But in 2021, reports came up that Ukraine is on the verge of applying for NATO membership and EU membership. There were strong reports that especially Ukraine could join NATO very soon. And the US and West European countries were instigating it, encouraging it to join NATO and EU. So this is where Russia decided to act. It decided to take the next step. It ordered a massive military mobilization to threaten Ukraine. Lakhs of Russian troops, they started surrounding Ukraine from three sides. From the eastern side with the help of separatists. The separatists would back Russian forces. So from the eastern borders, from Crimea in the south, and with the help of Belarus in the north. Belarus, as I told you, it's a close Russian ally. The Belarus leader, Lukashenko, is a dictator who is very close to Putin. They're both very close allies of each other. So with the full support of Belarus, Russian troops entered here as well. From the north, from the east, and from south, from Crimea. So by February 2022, more than 1 lakh Russian troops with heavy weaponry had accumulated all across Ukrainian borders. And then began the Russian military operation, the special military operation, which led to a full-scale invasion of Ukraine. Right? It appeared Ukraine is going to fall within days, within weeks. Right? Everyone said Russia will destroy Ukraine, given the military superiority that Russia has. No one believed Ukraine stood a chance. Right? Everyone thought within days or weeks, Ukraine would be run over by Russian troops. And that's how initially the war began as well. Russia had a clear edge where it was wiping out Ukraine's critical infrastructure, destroying roads, power plants, and even the capital was under threat. Kiev would have been easily captured by Russia. But very soon, Ukraine marked a turnaround. It did a U-turn. Western countries gave tremendous support to Ukraine. They have given billions of dollars in funds. US, UK, France, Germany, Italy, right, the whole European Union. They've pumped billions of dollars into Ukraine to fund the war, along with advanced weapons, intelligence, and even satellite resources for surveillance, communication, etc. So with complete Western support, Ukraine started fighting back. Under Ukrainian president, right, Ukrainian troops and civilians organized themselves, and they successfully pushed out the Russian attack from the north. They defended their capital. It was one of the legendary battles in modern times. They protected Kiev. Russia could not even get close to Kiev. They threw out Russian troops from the north, and they made rapid advances towards the east as well. In the last 1 year, we have seen that despite intense battles at Kharkiv and in this eastern part, the Donbas region, right, Ukrainian forces have made a lot of advances, pushed back the Russian troops. But by then, Russia had fully annexed this part, the Donbas region, including Donetsk and Luhansk, and the Mariupol region here, which is a major port, by the way, in Sea of Azov, and Crimea. This whole region now has come under Russian control. Russia even held a so-called referendum in Donbas region, so-called election, where people voted in favor of Russia, and Russia claims to have annexed Donbas region, that is Donetsk and Luhansk. They were declared as independent republics. Then a so-called election was held, and obviously everyone voted for Russia, and Russia claims sovereignty over these areas today. But no one recognizes this. This is an illegal annexation, so no country recognizes this as Russian territory. But Russia has basically connected Crimea and the Donbas region by occupying these parts of southeastern Ukraine. So from Crimea to Mariupol to Donbas, this whole region has come under Russian control. But in other areas, Russia has suffered setbacks. Russian forces have been pushed back, and today Ukraine is retaliating inside Russia. Ukraine is using basic drones, covert operations to target Russia. In Crimea, for example, Ukraine has delivered a big hit. Many Russian ships have been sunk. The Kerch Bridge has been targeted. Part of the Kerch Bridge was destroyed. Right? As far away as Moscow, Ukrainian attacks have started taking place. Right? Ukraine is using very simple basic drones, commercially available drones, rigging them with explosives and targeting key buildings, key military bases. It has scaled up covert operations as well, where special forces will penetrate into Russia to strike at key targets. So today Russia has suffered a setback, and basically the war has hit a stalemate. The war is not going anywhere. Neither side is winning, and it has hit a stalemate. Now this is where you should understand the Indian position. The last point, we can end the class after this. India's position on this conflict is very clear. We will not condemn Russia. We will not criticize Russia directly. Why? Because Russia is a traditional partner, a very strategic partner. Historically, it has supported India, and we still need Russia even today. Right? We have major national interests with regard to Russia, from being a military supplier to energy supplier, right? And gives support at the UN. There's no way we can turn against Russia, right? And it's also time to return the favor. When Russia has always backed India, Soviet Union has backed India. It's only time to return the favor. So India has decided not to condemn Russia. It's a very realistic policy that we are adopting. At any vote, we have abstained from the vote. Western countries have tried targeting Russia at UN and other multilateral bodies. In all these votes, we have abstained, meaning indirectly we are backing Russia. with regard to Western sanctions, India completely bypassed the Western sanctions. We have bypassed the Western sanctions and continued oil imports. In fact, we became one of the biggest buyers of Russian discounted oil. We continued with the S-400 deal as well. All right. So this is how India has backed Russia indirectly. All right. But to strike a balance with Western countries and with Ukraine, we have said this is not the time for war. As this war had a huge economic impact. It came right after the pandemic. Global economy took a hit. Oil markets, supply chains, they took a massive hit. Right? There was food shortage, inflation around the world. Several key sectors were disrupted because of the war. So India has said repeatedly, this is not a time for war. We have called for an end to the conflict through a negotiated settlement. We want peace to be restored. We have told this to Russia as well, that the war should end. End the conflict, talk to each other, resolve your differences, and strike a peace deal. So this is what India is pushing for, to strike a balance. Right? But we will not criticize Russia, we will not vote against it. We will bypass the sanctions, continue our trade, especially oil trade, which helps bring down our import bill as well, because we are purchasing cheaper oil from Russia. All right? But payments, however, has become an issue. How will you pay for this? We tried using the rupee. We tried working out the rupee ruble arrangement, but Russia is not convinced with this. What will Russia do with Indian rupees piling up? Russia has $45 billion worth of Indian rupees. What will it do? Indian rupee is not convertible. It's useless outside of India. Russia has no requirement, no such requirement within India. Can't buy any products within India as well. Right? We have opened Vostro accounts, just like we did with Iran. We have paid for Russian oil in Indian rupees. They're all sitting in Indian banks. But Russian companies, Russian government, they don't have purchases in India to that extent. So the money is idle. They can't use it. That is why Russia has a problem with India. They are pushing India to pay by using the Chinese currency. They want India to use Chinese yen. Sorry, the Chinese yuan. But India is not comfortable with this. We don't want to depend on Chinese currency. That becomes an obligation for us. Right? We've tried using dirhams of UAE. That route was working, but it becomes more expensive for India. We paid for some oil imports by using dirham of UAE. Right? Russia can directly use that. But that is the expensive route. So we are relying on the rupee route, but Russia is against it. It wants India to make payments in Chinese yuan. So now this is creating problems for us. How will we pay for the oil imports? Payments worth close to $45-50 billion were pending, and the payments have happened in Indian rupees. And Russia has no use for this. Our bilateral trade is very, very small. It's minimal. Russia has nothing to buy from India. Right? So that has become a challenge. We need to see how we will handle this in the coming days. So I think with this, we can end the session for today. We'll meet again on Monday to wrap up the remaining small topics. Next, we'll talk about Black Sea Grain Initiative, the last topic here. All right. And we'll look at some other regions, quick look at Africa, Europe, and Latin America, and some small miscellaneous topics like G20, then BRICS. Right. So these are the smaller issues we'll be dealing with in the last class. So now let me take a quick look at the questions. Just give me a few minutes. Maybe some key defense export to India would have been stopped. Right? Or a critical collaboration between India and US would have been affected. It's under that pressure that India had to, follow the sanctions against Iran. But Russia is a different case altogether. When it comes to India, Russia, US can't dictate everything. We have a much bigger traditional relationship to protect.